What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories.
5FG. Chapter 69. The battle on the top is completely over. Advertise here. Why would I believe Blackbeard's nonsense? Looking at all the top combat power of the naval headquarters who did not know when to surround them. Sengoku, Garp, Crane, Sora, Kizaru, Aokiji, Momoshiki, Tifish. When these people gather around, any pirate or criminal in the world can feel deep, deep despair. This is Shiryu's mood at the moment. How much he wanted to go back to a few hours ago. Go back to the same self who was still in the prison of Imper, and cut off the nonsense Blackbeard with a knife. In this case, it will not fall into the current situation. Shiryu, do you know the ability of Dark Fruit? It is enough to change the world and reach the top of the world. I can, from the capable person, extract the ability of the devil fruit he ate. Do you know what this means? I can help you get whatever ability you want. Moreover, we can create a truly invincible army composed entirely of capable people, even if it is the world government, it is impossible for us to be an opponent. Quote. What? You don't believe I have this ability? You know the situation outside now. As long as we board at the end and eliminate Whitebeard, I can get the strongest shock fruit ability from his corpse. Join us, Shiryu, we will stand at the top of the sea, thief ha ha ha. Shiryu seemed to still be ringing in the ears of Blackbeard's grand ambitions, but in an instant, the cruel reality was that they had only been out for a few hours, and they might be going back again. And, this time, his identity has changed from the deputy warden and criminal of the Impel prison to an ordinary criminal in the 6th floor of the prison, Eternal Hell. All the credit and treatment are all void. Just a decision a few hours ago. Asshole Blackbeard, Shiryu shouted loudly. Immediately afterwards, a huge figure smashed down with a shock wave of bright golden light. Kizaru's calm and indifferent face, the long sword condensed by the photons of ringworm honey. Aokiji's face was cold, and there was a frightening coldness when he raised his hand. And much more. After all, the place where they are at the moment is Marineford, where the highest marine combat power gathers. At this moment, the combined number of Marine's highest combat power is more than their number. This kind of power, how did Whitebeard win? In just a minute, Shiryu was completely lying on the ground, with only the last bit of consciousness left. Before his consciousness completely fell into a blur, such a thought flashed in his mind. Talk about these criminals, tie them all up, and take them back to Imper's prison afterwards. Sengoku ordered. This is already a blessing in misfortune. Blackbeard actually dared to bring this group of people from Imper's prison to Marineford. I really don't know if he is arrogant or crazy. But it's okay, except for the 2 legendary pirates and Shichibukai on the opposite side. The 4 brought out by Blackbeard are almost the most ruthless group on the 6th floor. These pirates are all at the level of big pirates, but the damage they cause is greater than that of some pirates close to the admiral level. Soon, groups of marine soldiers came up, holding seastone handcuffs and chains, and relocked these criminals who had just escaped from prison, and prepared to escort them back to Impel completely after the war was over. And to prevent them from escaping. Momoshiki and T-Dolphins are also responsible for guarding the prisoners locked up by seastone. Compared to the monster on the opposite side, it's really easy. Kizaru's face Jonin couldn't help twisting his mouth, revealing an extremely concealed wretched smile. To be honest, in the past few days, Sabaody was first beaten by the Straw Hat Boy. This time the war was on par with Blackfoot Sanji, who offered a bounty of less than 100 million. He wondered if he was old and his strength had regressed, why he couldn't even beat the young ones. And now after getting rid of Blackbeard's people without breaking a sweat. Obviously regained a little bit of confidence. It's not that I'm too weak, but that the monsters of the Straw Hat Pirates are really too strong. Marine's top fighters finish off the members of Blackbeard's command. Sengoku glanced at Fire Fist Ace and Phoenix Marco, who were very close. Just now Ace and Marco teamed up to block Blackbeard's men. The distance between them and them was extremely close at the moment, but Sengoku didn't make another shot. Fire Fist Ace has now unlocked the seastone handcuffs, and his strength is close to that of Admiral, not so easy to kill at all. Moreover, the terrifying strength of the pirates also completely cut off Sengoku's thoughts. Do you want to shoot? Sengoku, I'm also a criminal who just escaped from Impel. Just as Sengoku was finishing off Blackbeard's pirates, Bullet gave a crazy smile and shouted at Sengoku, full of provocation. Bullet. Sengoku glanced at Bullet, frowning. The successor of the Ghost was arrested because of Buster Call's cannon fodder and his Ngarp's actions. After so many years of being imprisoned in the Impel prison, his aura has become stronger, and the strength seems a little scary. Standing with Pluton Rayleigh and Burndy World next to him, Sengoku can clearly feel that Bullet is stronger than these 2 old legends around him. His strength is probably already one of the top-ranked powerhouses at the general level. And this crazy character. To be honest, Sengoku really wanted to start an unjust siege and get him in. However, this is impossible. Next to him, there are still 2 former partners, Pluton Rayleigh and the red-haired Shanks. Hey, Shanks, Captain Rayleigh, do you want to join forces? With our strength, we can completely eliminate Marine here, then board the Red Line, and eliminate 5 elders. Isn't everything easy to talk about? Bullet laughed maniacally. I'm not interested, Bullet. Shanks frowned at Bullet. Bullet is more dangerous and crazier than it was a few decades ago. Even the usually gentle Rayleigh frowned. You seem to have changed a lot, Bullet. Of course, I have become stronger, and I will become stronger, the strongest in the world. Bullet said loudly. There was still madness in his eyes, staring at the opposite Marine, as if he would rush towards Marine at any time. However, although Bullet admires strength and crazily pursues the strongest position, he is not a fool. He just came out of eternal hell, and his body has not adjusted to the peak at all. Not to mention that there are so many strong people in Marine, no matter how crazy he is, it is impossible to attack Marine at this time. Come on, it's all over. Whitebeard came from not far away. His big hand, like holding a bowling ball, pinched Blackbeard's unconscious head. Blackbeard opened his mouth wide, his eyes were completely turned white, his body was covered in blood, and there were not a few teeth left in his mouth, and they were almost knocked out at this moment. It's really a monster's body. After carrying Dad so many times, he is still breathing. Marco followed Whitebeard, looked at Blackbeard's swaying body, and said in surprise. He is very clear about the destructive power of the old man. He was pinched by the weak part of the neck, and 3 shocks were delivered abruptly, but he still hasn't died at this moment. It really makes people can't help but sigh the strength of his body. There was only 1 breath left for the first time, and Marco felt that he was going to die in the next second. In the end, he was able to maintain consciousness, and after 2 consecutive attacks, he completely lost consciousness. Little ones, go home. Whitebeard held Blackbeard in one hand and a naginata in the other, stabbing high into the sky. Oh, all the pirates of the Whitebeard pirates raised their weapons at this moment, full of cheers of victory. Even in this war, too many companions died because of it. However, it's like the awareness question that Luffy has heard countless times. When stepping out of one's own circle and becoming a pirate, the lowest level of awareness of life and death is already engraved in one's heart. Whether it's the weakest pirate, or a powerful one like Whitebeard. Luffy, that Uncle Whitebeard is dying. When Whitebeard carried Blackbeard's body back to the Moby Dick and past Luffy and the others, Chopper whispered in Luffy's ear. The direction of the color of knowledge and knowledge awakened by everyone is not the same. Luffy's emotional perception enhancement, Usopp's perception of distance enhancement, and Chopper's vitality perception enhancement. Maybe it's because of his status as a doctor. At close range, his perception of a person's vitality will be very strong. Just like now, Whitebeard's vitality, in his opinion, is like a candle in the wind. No, not even a candle in the wind. Chopper has never felt this vitality. Under normal circumstances, this kind of vitality has already entered a dying state and will die at any time. However, Whitebeard not only did not die, he was even able to gain the upper hand in a head-to-head confrontation with the strong Admiral level. It can even kill monsters like Blackbeard with bare hands in a short period of time. If one simply looked at the appearance, no one would be able to tell that this was an old man who was about to die. I almost feel it too. Hearing Chopper's words, Luffy didn't show much surprise. He looked at Whitebeard's tall figure with admiration, and sighed. The pain in that uncle's heart was almost overflowing, but he didn't make a cold snort from the beginning to the end. With the enhanced perception of emotions, Luffy can clearly feel Whitebeard's pain in his knowledge. Dragging that crippled body to fight, every moment is a torment, and even standing up has to break through the limit with willpower, but, judging from his face alone, he didn't even shed a drop of cold sweat. His will was indeed already strong enough to be ultimate, and even the pain of being overwhelmed and dying could not make him speak out. Of course, in addition to pain, there is a deeper emotion supporting him. Luffy couldn't understand the complex tenderness, but it felt a lot like Garp felt to him sometimes. There is no relationship with a partner. No matter what the emotion is, the will supported by this emotion transcends death and the body, which is really awe-inspiring. Ask for flowers. Just ace him. Luffy glanced at the smiling Ace, not knowing what to say. At this moment, he is immersed in the joy of reuniting with his partner, immersed in the joy of returning home. Ace has a very good relationship with Uncle Whitebeard. I don't know if he can bear the sadness of Uncle Whitebeard's death. Solve Blackbeard in Whitebeard. During the process, the members of the Whitebeard pirates had almost cleaned up the battlefield and carried the wounded. There is a weird tacit understanding between pirates and Marine. Then, we shall take our leave. The redhead pressed his right hand on the hilt of his sword and said to Sengoku. But Sengoku said he didn't want to bother at all. This group of pirates completely nailed the Marine and the world government to the pillar of shame. If Marine can't increase its strength and reverse its decline, it is estimated that in the next few years, Marine's control over the world will be greatly reduced. Of course, to be honest, that may not have much to do with me. After the defeat of the war, although Sengoku felt heavy, he relaxed a little, and everything just waited for the trial of the 5 old men above. I'll take another look at Marine's Buster Call. Before leaving, Bard laughed wildly. I will repay the scar left by this Marine tenfold. There are a lot of scars on Bullet's chest, which were the scars on his body caused by the Marine Buster Call's shells before he was arrested in Import prison. Tell the bastards in the government, and I'll pull them down one by one, Valalalo. Burndy World's eyes were terribly cold, and he was holding 5 gravels in his hands, like a bloodthirsty beast that had gone completely crazy. Lost the last bit of humanity. There is no way anyone who is in his prime of life will be frozen for decades, it will be like this. He is different from Bullet. Bullet is still in his prime, and he is now in his 80s, without any worries or fears. If not for better revenge. The current world dares to launch a deadly charge directly against the current Marine's full combat power. These two troublesome fellows. Crocodile looked at the two lunatics beside him, his eyes flickering, and he didn't know what he was thinking. These two madmen. Sengoku watched Bullet and whirled. These two crazy guys board Whitebeard's boat and leave, with a very ugly expression on his face. These two guys are just plain. If it weren't for the Whitebeard pirates, Red Hair pirates and Straw Hat pirates standing behind them. Sengoku had to lead the group behind him to teach these two arrogant lunatics a lesson. But now, Sengoku could only watch helplessly as the two of them fought their way, and then left gracefully. The war is over, hurry up and treat the wounded. Sengoku watched the ships of the Whitebeard pirates depart and spoke loudly to the surrounding marine soldiers. Looking at the wounded everywhere around, as well as the dilapidated naval headquarters, the residential area in the distance of Marineford. Sengoku just felt tired. The war that took a lot of effort to prepare this time was completely defeated because of the Straw Hat pirates. Lost his wife and lost his army. Moreover, this is still the immediate loss. Has the real loss come yet? In a few days, the group of world government people above, the kings of the various alliance countries, and the overwhelming reports will all condemn their failure with all their strength. Sengoku felt a little tired. The wound on his body that was hit by Whitebeard, Roronoa, and Pluton Rayleigh was also bleeding continuously at this moment, and he was in severe pain. That blow really almost killed him. At that time, all his focus was on killing Fire Fist Ace, and he didn't have any defense against his back at all. He was hit by 3 strong men of the same level. If it wasn't for his amazing defensive power in the Buddha state, if it were Garp or Zephyr, he might have died directly with one blow. Even so, he still lay in the ruins for a long time before regaining his ability to move. By the way, did you forget something? Sengoku patted his head, the sharp pain from the wound was still stimulating him, making him unable to concentrate on thinking. It happened at this time. A marine soldier brought over a phone bug. It was not the 5 elders who called to ask for accountability, but the force from the Impel prison. Taking a deep breath to clear his mind a little, Sengoku answered the call. I'm Sengoku. Sorry, Marshal Sengoku, the great prison of Impel was breached, and Shiryu also defected and joined the Blackbeard. Magellan's guilty voice came from the phone bug. I know all about it, Magellan, you can rest easy and recuperate. I will send someone to find out about Impel's situation. Sengoku said in a low voice. He also knew that there was no use berating Magellan now. After all, the other party has tried their best. In the end, the reason why Imper was breached was because naval headquarters involved too many troops. In addition, that bastard Blackbeard, using Shichibukai's identity, slapped them. Chapter 70 The 5 Elders Gaff, Luffy's status. Advertise here. After a while, Sengoku hangs up the phone call from Impel Grand Prison, slightly relieved. Impel's situation is not as bad as he imagined. Blackbeard's target is only those heinous criminals who can become his companions on the 6th floor. Not many pirates on the first 5 floors were released. Moreover, those pirates on the first 5 floors did not have the strength to snatch the warship from Impel's garrison marine. The whole Impel really counted, and the 2 boats escaped. Generally, they are Blackbeard's people. 4 of them were taken away from the 6th floor, and all of them have been arrested now. Except that there may be some problems in the transportation of huge battleships, the others can be bundled with a little seastone. Another ship is Burndy World and Douglas Bullet. To be honest, the combined danger of these 2 people is not as dangerous as the 4 people caught now. Thinking of this, Sengoku still has a headache. Report the matter here to the above. After Sengoku had a general understanding of Imper's situation, he called a marine sergeant to order. Although he also knows, at this time, the strong CPO has most likely reported the matter here to 5 elders in detail. However, Marine's attitude still needs to be clarified. Sengoku. Garp walked beside Sengoku with some guilt, and sat on the ruined stone beside him. If Ace hadn't been rescued, his heart would naturally be replaced by anger. But at this moment, after Ace was rescued, Luffy retreated unscathed. The aspect of family affection in his heart is completely relieved, and the sense of guilt for justice arises spontaneously on the other side. In this war, he did not perform very well, to be honest. The will to fight is so weak that it is completely suppressed by the desperate Whitebeard. Needless to say, Garp, I can understand you, and you have already done everything you can in 210 in this battle. The defeat in this battle has nothing to do with you. Sengoku waved his hand and said to his old friend. In fact, this is really not a word of comfort. Although Garp struggled throughout the first half of the war, he made a decisive move to block Whitebeard when the situation was most dangerous. If it weren't for Garp's timely shot, the battle would have collapsed long ago. The reason for the failure of this war, no matter how you calculate it, cannot be attributed to Garp. The real reason for the failure was that they underestimated the opponent's combat experience. Underestimated the important factor of the Straw Hat Boys, coupled with the important event of Blackbeard's attack on Imper's prison. Finally, the red-haired Shanks arrived in time. At that time, it would be nice if it could hit directly. Sengoku looked at his palm. In a normal war, the last chance is when the Straw Hat Boy can't move, and the Fire Fist Ace is blocked by the Seastone Hand Germanium. If his full blow can directly hit the Fire Fist Ace, there is a great chance that he can be killed directly. If Fire Fist died here, Marine wouldn't have lost so badly. No, it's not miserable. It's about winning in the end. Because their actions this time are like the whole world proclaiming that Marine publicly executes the evil blood of One Piece King Luogia. However, if you think about it carefully, it still won't work. Sengoku thought about it carefully. Words that really killed the Fire Fist Ace. Take the combat power shown by the Straw Hat Pirates and the Whitebeard Pirates. Plus those two old-time lunatics that Blackbeard let out of prison at the end. Then this battle may really become a life and death battle. Marine has a high probability of not being able to win, and the top combat power of the pirates may win miserably. So far, the result will be even more terrifying than Marine killing Fire Fist Ace. Marine is in a slump, let alone entering the New World, and its control over the first half of the Grand Line and the world will be reduced to the minimum. The balance is completely broken. At that time, it was really the advent of the era of great pirates. In the final analysis, we are still too weak. Zephyr came over with his asthma medicine in his mouth, and said in a low voice. The strong ones on the pirate side have appeared too quickly, and our Marine is already facing a lack of success. This is an important problem. As a Marine recruit instructor, Zephyr is very clear about Wang's Marine disadvantages. The elite vice admirals in this department are almost all over 40 or 50 years old. Kizaru 56 had me, Akainu 52, Aokiji 49. This is the age of the current Marine 3 admiral. To put it mildly, they are middle-aged, and they are almost approaching old age. Not to mention the Marine pillars of their generation, Garp is in his 80s, and everyone is over 70 years old. And further down the line, Momosuke is not actually much younger than Aokiji. Moving on, Marine has few good prospects left. When Zephyr was a recruit instructor, Kizaru, Akainu, and Aokiji were all in their early 20s, and they already had the name of monsters. A veritable genius. And now, as far as Marine is concerned, there is actually only one Smoker who is barely considered a good seedling. In this regard, there is simply no comparison between Smoker and the 3 admirals. Do you still want to compare with pirates? The redhead is only in his 30s, and he is already a 4 emperors. Fire Fist Ace is in his 20s, close to a general. Not to mention the group of monsters of the Straw Hat Pirates, they are simply too young. Among them, the Straw Hat Boy has the record of defeating Admiral head-on. Again, Sabaody has more than 10 supernovas this year, which is already very good at explaining the problem. If no changes are made, it is estimated that in the next 10 years, when the older generation of Marines are completely old, Marines will be completely suppressed by pirates. This is a big problem. I reported it to the 5 elders. Sengoku frowned thinking about Zephyr. These things are not a big problem when Marine thinks he is the strongest. However, after being hit head-on, it was discovered that this problem was already very serious. Hey, Zephyr, I heard that you were defeated by the pet on Luffy's ship, and the bounty for that pet is only 50 Baileys. Garp pinched his nostrils and asked with a smile. That's definitely not a 50 Bailey pet. Where have you ever seen a 50 Bailey pirate who can compete head-on with Admiral? Zephyr said with an ugly face. You're just the ex-Admiral Zephyr, and, instead of fighting it head-on, the 50 Baileys beat you head-on. Garp sprinkled salt in Zephyr's wounds. Bastard, I'm going to kill you. Translation shouted loudly. Don't these guys have any sense of shame? Really? Crane looked at Zephyr and Garp who were fighting not far away, and couldn't help sighing. But let's be honest, compared to those Marine soldiers, vice admirals who lost their minds. These older Marines, although they felt frustrated, it wasn't that big of a deal. They came out of the legendary pirates of that old era. In that era of legendary pirates, there were more and stronger legendary pirates than now. Peak Whitebeard, Rocks, Luogia, Golden Lion, World and more. But Marine at that time was much weaker than it is now. They came from failure again and again, watching the pirates rampant in the sea again and again. But after countless failures, they finally stood at the end. The Rocks pirate, which was almost able to unify the world, is gone. The Golden Lion was captured in Imper, and disappeared after breaking his legs and breaking out of prison. Burndy World has just escaped from trouble, and a few years later, it may die of old age in Impel. Luogia died in execution. Amidst countless failures, they buried that legendary old era. Look up. Failure doesn't mean you lose everything, and you can't bear any setbacks. Justice, not any justice, you have to think about it carefully, what exactly are we burdened with? He loudly said to the distraught Marine soldiers beside him. What she said also made the eyes of some soldiers around have a gleam of brilliance. Of course, Crane is very clear. Soldiers with a righteous heart are easy to motivate. The ones who are really difficult to deal with are those high-ranking people. Of course, when the Marines were doing their post-war work in an orderly manner. Under the huge pothole that runs through the entire Mariajoy, on the sea surface, lying on a piece of gravel, Akainu, who has completely passed out, just drifts with the current. It seems that in a short period of time, he seems to have been forgotten. Holy Land Mariajoy. Between the powers of Pangu City. Five elders looked ugly, they already knew all the information about this war. Marine is a group of idiots. The blonde five elders roared loudly. This is the second time the five elders have broken a defense. The first time they got anxious was when Ohara was destroyed 20 years ago. When the genius Dr. Kuloha really gained insight into the 100 years of history that disappeared, they urgently asked the CP organization to get rid of all the scholars of Ohara. And this is the second time. Don't look at how disdainful five elders are to Marine on weekdays. Even publicly humiliated Marine Marshal Sengoku numerous times. The supreme combat power of Marine is attributed to the subordinates of celestial dragons. But when Marine failed, it was five elders who panicked the most. Marine is the strongest violent organization under the world government, and also the strongest force to maintain the rule of the world government. There are strong players at the admiral level in CPO, but they are definitely not comparable to Marine. After all, the CP organization is just a spy organization, and the Marine is a real military organization. This time, Marine was defeated by the pirates head-on when all the combat power was complete. It directly made five elders, who was firmly seated at the pinnacle of world power, a little panicked. Like the blonde five elders, at this moment, they can only use angry roars and humiliation to Marine, and hide a trace of fear in their hearts that has not appeared for countless years. The key to this war still lies in the Straw Hat Boy. Five elders with a long white beard analyzed with an ugly face. If the Straw Hat Pirates hadn't blocked the four admiral-level fighters, Marine wouldn't have lost so badly. Not long after the defeat, all the information of this war was completely put on the desktop of five elders by the CP organization. They know all the information about this war and where it is headed. It is clear where the key points are. The issue of the Impel prison in the back, and the appearance of the Red Hair Pirates are not the key. The Straw Hat Pirates are the real key. If it weren't for the Straw Hat Pirates suddenly appearing four strong enough to compete with Admiral, if it weren't for the Straw Hat Boys, they would be able to defeat Akainu head-on in a short time and save Fire Fist Ace. The Whitebeard Pirates can't do it at all. Can survive until the monsters from Imper prison come out. Nor will it wait for Redhead's support to arrive. The instigator of all this is all because of the Straw Hat Boy. Is that fruit really that powerful? Five elders holding the demon sword had an extremely ugly expression on his face. Don't forget, it's a fruit named after a god, a real miracle fruit. Five elders, a bald mustache, spoke. Nika fruit, it's not the worst yet. The Straw Hat Boy has completely grown up, and getting rid of him is no easier than getting rid of one of the four emperors. Five elders in the black cap sighed and said, the thing I fear most now is that the Straw Hat Kid is that man. Joey Bowie. This name seemed to be taboo, and the breathing of all five elders present became heavy in an instant, and the veins on their foreheads and arms were exposed. That kind of emotion is extremely complicated. It seems to be fear, it seems to be angry. It's hard to imagine that in this world, there actually exists such a thing that makes the five elders, who hold the highest power, completely lose their composure. Do you want to report the matter here to Lord I Am? Suggested by the five elders. No, now we have mastered the complete combat power of the Straw Hat Pirates, which is equivalent to a four emperors level pirate group, and we are not in a hurry to report to Lord I Am. Within a controllable range. Quote. The other five elders retorted momentarily. When it comes to I Am, their faces are full of respect, and of course, there is even more fear. Even when reporting this kind of thing, they were afraid of disturbing each other. It really doesn't work. It's not too late to report to Lord I Am. When the time comes, just ask Lord I Am to erase the Straw Hat crew. Five elders in black beanies qualified the matter. Since I don't want to trouble Lord I Am, then we have to consider the next issue of Sea Balance. The blonde five elders said with a heavy face. Their previous goal was to publicly execute the Fire Fist of Luojia's blood, and instantly bury Whitebeard, the four emperors, in Marineford. In this way, the strength of the pirates can be greatly deterred, and in the next plan, Marine will take the initiative. Set out to clear the pirates. But now, the plan has completely failed. In this live broadcast to the whole world, Marine and world government have completely become clowns. Majesty sweeps the floor. It can be predicted that for a long time to come, their control over the four seas will decrease. Because of the contempt for Marine, a large number of people may go to sea and choose to become pirates. Moreover, because of this battle, five elders also saw that Marine is not the strongest. The current Marine power is still not enough. Whether we are facing the large number of pirates who are about to go to sea or the powerful Straw Hat crew, we need to expand our army. Five elders, with a bald head and a 5.5-inch hu, said calmly. Do you all have any suggestions? Five elders in black cap asked. Ask for the military expenses of the Marine expansion from each of the allied countries, and conduct a large-scale conscription of all the allied countries, with strength as the top priority. There are a lot of vacancies in Shichibukai now, it's time to reappoint Shichibukai. Allocate more funds to Vegapunk and let him speed up the research and development of Seraphim. We don't have so much time for him to consume. Suggestions were put forward one by one. And each one is very feasible, and some of them have already begun to be implemented. This is the essence of world government. They control most of the world's resources, talents, technology, money and so on. As long as they are ready to do something, there will be a result soon. By the way, there is also the issue of the bounty for the Straw Hat Boys, and the division of the danger level of the Straw Hat Pirates. The blonde 5 elders spoke up. To be honest, the bounty offered by a pirate would actually be discussed on the meeting table of the 5 elders. This may be the greatest honor for pirates. Is there a bounty? Kaido is the highest one besides Whitebeard. Make the Straw Hats bounty a bit higher than Kaido, let the pirates go to New World to bite dogs. As for the status, don't the pirates like that false name? Let Morgans do a good job of publicizing it, and let New World mess up because of the Straw Hat Boy. 5 elders, Long Whitebeard, offered grimly. The bounty was originally intended to attract more bounty hunters. But it is impossible for bounty hunters to kill those big pirates whose bounties exceed 1 billion. So the high bounty in the back actually doesn't make much sense. The so-called 4 emperors, offering bounties, have gradually become 2 weapons in the hands of the world government. And, most of the time, it is very easy to use. Chapter 71 Whitebeard's Death, Farewell. Advertise here. Sabaody Archipelago. This place has become a marine restricted area at the moment. Because most of the pirate ships of the Whitebeard pirates are currently docking around the Sabaody Archipelago. They are pirates and cannot travel to the New World via the Red Line. If you want to return to the New World, you can only go to the New World by coating the boat, and then go to the New World through the Fishman Island. Red Hair pirates also dock here. At this moment, half a day has passed since the end of the Marineford War. The process of coating is very fast. There are many coders in the Whitebeard pirates, and after recruiting the coders on the Sabaody Archipelago, the progress is rapid. Although the Whitebeard pirates, Red Hair pirates, and Straw Hat pirates are all present, they are powerful. But it is naturally the best to return to New World as soon as possible. After all, Marine and World Government are not soft persimmons. If it is really urgent, it will hurt both sides. It's just that at this moment, all the pirates in the Whitebeard pirates don't have the slightest joy of victory on their faces at this moment, but infinite sadness. On the Moby Dick, in Whitebeard's room. Whitebeard lay in bed on a drip. Chopper was diagnosing Whitebeard's body with a stethoscope, while Marco burned a large amount of resurrection inflammation on Whitebeard's body. No, his body has collapsed. Chopper took off the medical equipment on his body, his face was ugly. Heart disease, various hidden injuries inside the body, coupled with aging, his body has reached its limit. Chopper had a look of shock on his face. Only after he really came into contact with Whitebeard's body and made a comprehensive diagnosis, can he truly understand how bad Whitebeard's body has become. Heart disease, and too many hidden injuries, this body has already reached its maximum limit. Not because of the injuries from the previous battles, the injuries from the previous battles were just catalysts. Before this battle, his body was already at its limit. An analogy is a wooden barrel full of holes, which can only be hanged by the liquid medicine. However, it is such a broken body. He was able to unleash a power zone that shocked everyone simply by relying on his will. If there hadn't been this war, perhaps he would have been able to hang himself for a year and a half. Chopper sighed. But now, 26 has completely broken through the limit in the battle, and there is no possibility of recovery. Father must be saved. Marco continued to instill the resurrection Chingyun. In fact, as an excellent ship doctor, he knew very well that due to his physical condition. Before the war, he already knew. This time is likely to be Dad's last battle. However, when facing this moment, Marco still couldn't accept it at all. He was the first member invited by Whitebeard. From a very young age, he was invited by Whitebeard to join the pirate group. Rather than being invited to join, it is better to say that he was adopted by his father as an orphan. Father. Diamond Chaozi and Hua Jian turned their heads to one side, tears were hard to wipe away from the corners of their eyes. Sorry, Dad. Ace was already kneeling in front of the bed, slamming his head on the floor hard. What? Why are you crying? You stupid sons. Whitebeard sat on the bed, his voice was still majestic and bold, and he laughed. After laughing, his eyes were gentle and deep, as if they contained the entire sea, and he said slowly with long memories. From the beginning of my journey as a pirate, I am very different from other pirates. I don't need treasures, women, food, I don't need any of them. The captain of the first pirate group I joined once asked me, "Hey, Newgate, what do you want?" My answer is, family. Family is what I pursue. Not blood, or anything else, but the kind of family that I can protect by relying on each other and warming each other. So, Marco, Josie, Vista, and Ace, before I knew it, I had a big family, a lot of family. Having said that, Whitebeard took a slight breath, and looked at the team leaders in front of the bed with gentle and fatherly eyes. As well as the members of the Whitebeard pirates who have surrounded the deck to the brim. I'll ask you one last question. As a father, am I still qualified? Whitebeard asked gently, at the moment of asking this sentence. All the members of the Whitebeard pirates had tears in their eyes. The voice was so high that it could tear the sky apart. Of course, father. The huge sound wave moved even Luffy. He can feel all the emotions of the sea here. Their fatherly affection for Whitebeard lying in the middle of the hospital bed. Ace hit his head on the ground, and the tears in his eyes fell to the ground drop by drop. Why do you call him daddy? Because he sees us as his sons. No matter who gave birth, it is Tianai's claws. Memories of the past flooded into my heart one after another, which further gave birth to the suffocating sadness in my heart. It's different from the sadness in the hearts of the people of the Whitebeard pirates. Whitebeard, who was lying on the hospital bed, smiled happily and satisfied. It's like getting the greatest recognition in this life. Keep your head up, Ace. I am very clear about my physical condition, and it has nothing to do with you. There are many starting points in a person's life, but there is only one end point. The awareness of life and death. Every man who has set foot on the sea has already made an awakening, so there is no need to blame yourself. After my death, the Whitebeard pirates will be replaced by Marco as the captain. With a smile on his face, Whitebeard calmly stated the fact that he was about to die. He didn't give up the position of captain directly to Ace, although Ace was indeed his chosen successor, just like Luffy's Shanks. However, he is also very clear that Ace's current strength, qualifications, and the lives of his partners who are burdened by this war are not suitable. Father, what are you talking about? Father, you will never die. Marco, aren't you the ship's doctor? Treat Dad quickly. One after another voices came from all directions. However, Marco just clenched his fists hard and lowered his head. Forgive me, stupid sons. Whitebeard leaned on the bed, closed his eyes, and said in a low voice full of vicissitudes but extremely satisfied. I got everything from you. I'll just call it a day. It's been a long journey. In Whitebeard's ear, the shouts of members of the Whitebeard pirates have been lost. In front of him, he seemed to see the figures of his sons who had boarded the boat one by one. Seeing the Moby Dick under the sun, the slight sound of waves rang in my ears. The sound of high drinking sailing, whether it sounds in the morning or at dusk, seems to be the most beautiful moment. What a nice sail. Farewell, sons. A faint voice sounded in the cabin. The plain voice represented the end of a true legend. A whimper sounded in the cabin. Even with a sword on his body, the iron-like man on the sea who wouldn't snort, couldn't cry at this moment. All members of the Whitebeard pirates. Today, I lost my father. 4 emperors Whitebeard, dead. He died in the company of his family, what he pursued all his life. The relationship between Luffy and Whitebeard isn't that strong yet, and they can't cry. It's just that he looked at Whitebeard who died peacefully on the bed, opened his mouth, but made no sound. A kind of inexplicable and grand shock lingered in his heart, making him not know what to do. A man of the sea is born in the sea and dies in the sea. On the body of the dead Whitebeard, he seemed to see a pirate. The life of a legendary pirate. He didn't know what mood he was in at the moment, but he felt inexplicably dull. This feeling of heaviness made him push away the crying pirates of the Whitebeard pirates, walked to the railing of the Moby Dick deck, leaned against the railing, and stared blankly at the sky. What's wrong, Luffy? On the deck of the Moby Dick. Luffy, who was inexplicably irritable in his heart, heard Rayleigh's voice next to his ear. There was a gentle smile on his face, and there was a little sparkle in the corner of his eyes. Although he still has the combat power to match Admiral, but this is already a 76-year-old man. The old friends leave one by one, the more he can feel a kind of sadness like the remnants of the old era, even if it is this kind of sadness, he has felt it many times. How should I put it? There's an inexplicable irritability about the death of Uncle Whitebeard. Luffy looked up at the sky's path. This is the best way for Newgate to die. Rayleigh smiled, looking at the pirates on the Moby Dick, around the Moby Dick, who were crying bitterly because of Whitebeard's death. Newgate, he died laughing. There was a touch of sadness in Rayleigh's eyes, but he said with a smile. The alien among the pirates, chasing the emotion called family, I was not very able to understand Newgate's thoughts when I was young, but seeing this scene now, I may have understood. His life's pursuit, chasing his family, embarked on a voyage with his family as the starting point, and then died peacefully and gently under the watchful eyes of his family. This is the life of the legendary pirate Whitebeard, a life he dreamed of and had no regrets. I always feel that this kind of result is too ordinary for a pirate like him. Luffy finally understood why he was bored. Such a powerful Uncle Whitebeard did not meet Luojia's vigorous death, but finally died on the hospital bed. He just died peacefully. In this turbulent sea, it was like an ordinary wave returning to the ocean. Bland. Rayleigh said calmly and meaningfully. What are you looking for to go to sea? Luffy. Of course One Piece, I am the man who wants to be One Piece. Luffy held the straw hat in his hand, looked at the middle of the straw hat, and said firmly. One Piece. A man who pursues freedom and dreams of going to sea, and Newgate's dream is family. Rayleigh said calmly. A man who spends his whole life pursuing and realizing his dream, and a man who dies in his dream, are they really so peaceful? Newgate is a man who is absolutely not inferior to Luojia. Their lives have completely different endings, but the lives of any of them are absolutely legendary. Rayleigh's words silenced Luffy a bit. He is chasing. There is the limit of freedom, at sea. Just like Luojia, a legendary, magnificent, interesting and free life. This is true even until the end of life. On the surface, he really didn't like the way Whitebeard had come to the end of his life. But, in essence, they are all one kind of people. This is why the relationship between Newgate and Luojia is very good. Your voyage is still too little. When your voyage comes to an end, it may be you. Really think about it, what is the time to be free? Quote. Rayleigh patted Luffy's shoulder with a smile, and left feeling a little lonely holding the flagon. Freedom. When I die, what will I look like? Is it a vigorous life like Luogia, or a life like Uncle Whitebeard who has fulfilled his dreams and is peaceful without regrets? Die. Quote. Luffy stared at the straw hat in his hand, and after a moment, he put the straw hat on his head with a big smile on his face. Well, everything is fine, I just need to sail freely. This is his true character, because of God. The answer to freedom. The essence of dreams. Calmness and intensity. He doesn't need to think about these things. As long as he sails happily, one day, he will get it naturally. Answer. It is better to have a happy banquet than to think hard about these things. Of course, now is definitely not the time for a party. Farewell, Uncle Whitebeard. Luffy raised his head slightly and looked towards the sky. Although he didn't cry, there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. That heroic uncle died just like that. During the past few days of getting along with 047, Luffy also regards this uncle who seems to have a bad temper, but is actually just a bit stubborn, as a friend. This is the second time he has experienced the sadness of his friend's death. Not as painful as the first time Sabo died though. Ace, he must be suffering right now. A day later. Port of the Sabaody archipelago. All the ships of the Whitebeard pirates were urgently coded. The crew on board looked sad. Goodbye, Luffy, we're going back to New World, Papa's body, we'll be buried in Papa's hometown. And teach that guy, he'll die at Thatch's grave to repent for everything he's done. With sadness in his eyes, Ace said goodbye to Luffy. If you need help with anything, feel free to contact me. Time flies so fast. In a blink of an eye, your strength has already surpassed mine. It must be hard for Sabo to think of this scene. Ace. Luffy looked at Ace with some concern. Don't worry, I'm not such a fragile guy. I will definitely inherit Dad's will. I will become stronger and let the name of Whitebeard resound through heaven. Ace smiled. Ace's younger brother and everyone in the Straw Hat Pirates, please feel free to visit us in New World. Marco shouted towards Luffy, and the members of the Straw Hat Pirates behind him. I see, Pineapple Head. Luffy responded equally loudly. What a nasty guy, can't he have a better name? Marco stood on the deck, a little helpless. Pineapple Head, is really a guy who likes to give people some weird nicknames. The huge fleet of the Whitebeard pirates dived into the bottom of the sea one by one. This notorious pirate group promoted by the world government has formed a deep friendship with the Straw Hat Pirates in just a few days. Are you leaving just like that? I wanted to have a good exchange of swordsmanship with that guy, Vista. Zoro looked at the rippling and gradually calming water surface, and said with some regret. After all, Uncle Whitebeard is dead. They have a very good relationship with that uncle. That kind of relationship is not fake. If it were me, I would too. Sanji didn't go on. He rang Zap. That uncle who was very similar to Whitebeard, with bad mouth, conceited, arrogant, but always guarding you in the most difficult time. Maybe this is the father. Sanji lightly lit a cigarette for himself, he was the one who could empathize with the guys from the Whitebeard pirates the most. Because Zap's character is so similar to Whitebeard. At first I thought it was a difficult group of people to get along with. It's a pity. Nami couldn't help but said. Some things can only be understood after personal experience and contact. Robin said calmly. Well, we're leaving too, Luffy. A voice sounded behind Luffy, making Luffy tremble uncontrollably. That is, Shanks' voice. Chapter 72 The Promise, Redhead and Luffy. Advertise here. From yesterday's Marineford War to now. Luffy has been staying on the Moby Dick partly because of Whitebeard's death. Another aspect is not knowing how to face Shanks. Because their agreement was when he became an outstanding pirate. He didn't know if he at this time could be called an outstanding pirate. But both he and Shanks knew that the meeting was a little early. They should meet again in New World on the route of the pirates, instead of meeting in the first half of the Grand Line in advance because of Ace. Finally, though, at parting time, Shanks approached. Shanks. Luffy's body trembled slightly, and he turned around, his eyes filled with tears. Especially when he saw Shanks' empty left arm, this man saved his life with his own arm. What, Luffy, you still cry as much as you did when you were a child, ha ha ha. Shanks looked at Luffy and said something funny. I'm not a crybaby. Luffy wiped the tears from his eyes, he was just a little too excited. Hey, Luffy, do you remember the promise we made? Shanks looked at Luffy with a calm smile on his face. Oh, of course, I will never forget that promise in my life. Luffy lost his mind for a moment, then said firmly with a smile. I must be protecting this straw hat with all my heart, just to wait for the day when I return it to you. Luffy took off the straw hat from his head, looked at the somewhat worn straw hat, his expression was full of nostalgia. He has been wearing this straw hat for so long, and he has entrusted his feelings for it for a long time. It is no longer just an ordinary straw hat that Shanks deposited with him. However, he still solemnly handed the straw hat to Shanks. At this scene, everyone in the red hair pirates behind Shanks couldn't help feeling a little bit emotional. It's been so many years, the agreement between little Luffy and the head. Usopp sighed. Their thoughts, in an instant, seemed to return to the port of that small village 10 years ago. I will deposit this hat with you, and you must return it to me. When you become a great pirate, it is agreed, Luffy. I will definitely return it to you. I will find a group of companions who will not lose to you, go out to sea, and become the One Piece King. The promise between the Weeping Boy and the one-armed big pirate, 10 years have passed in the blink of an eye. This hat is getting old, too. Shanks held the straw hat in his hands, and looked at the straw hat with nostalgia. Wind and rain, plus some traces of stitching that were not there before. However, this is the thickness of the will. The hat must be entrusted with Luojia's will, and now Luffy's will is added to his will. He doesn't hate old things, the weight of old things is the accumulation of countless new traces. Hey, Luffy, do you think you're a big pirate now? Shanks looked at the straw hat in his hand, and said in a low and calm voice. I don't know what a big pirate is, but I am the man who wants to be the king of the pirates. Luffy opened his mouth wide, showing a big smile. So, do you think you've found a partner who won't lose to me? Shanks continued. Certainly. Luffy turned his head, glanced at his partner behind him, and said without the slightest hesitation. Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, Nami, Chopper, Robin, Frankie, Brook, my mate, the best mate in the whole world, Shanks. You guy, always say something like that. Zoro couldn't help lowering his head, and smiled helplessly. What kind of best partner? It's really embarrassing. Chopper's eyes were lost in laughter, and he hid behind Robin, his tiny arms dangling like noodles. Chopper, you are hiding the wrong way. Robin bent his right index finger and placed it on his chin, squinting his eyes and chuckling softly. What an embarrassing evaluation. My face is red. Ah, I have no face. Yo hee hee hee. Brook held the skull's head and said with a strange smile. The others, Sanji, Nami, Frankie, couldn't help but smile. Ha ha ha, you've really grown up a lot, Luffy. Looking at Luffy and the partners behind him, the redhead couldn't help laughing loudly. The redhead turned around and walked up to the Red Force, and then turned around again under Luffy's gaze. He rubbed the straw hat in his hand, then threw it down the boat. The straw hat flew in the air, flew towards Luffy, and fell into Luffy's arms. Shanks. Luffy looked at the straw hat in his arms, a little dazed. It's yours, Luffy, and you're better suited than I am to sail with this straw hat. Shanks laughed loudly. When you become One Piece, let's hold a banquet together. Shanks. Luffy grasped the straw hat in his hand, and put it on his head with all his strength. I will, Luffy whispered. Red Force sailed slowly, just at the moment when he was about to dive into the water. Whoosh. An extremely fast steel ball directly hit Usopp on Red Force. Usopp's gaze was fixed, and he raised the gun extremely fast. A bullet with the color of the weapon was released instantly, and firmly stopped the steel ball in the air. However, Usopp couldn't help shrinking his pupils slightly when he saw the person who hit the steel ball. Usopp. The other members of the Straw Hat Pirates watched in surprise as Usopp put down the slingshot, stepped forward, and took off the mask of the Sniper King on his face. A complex face was revealed. This blow was made for my mother. When we meet again, I will surpass you and become a brave sea warrior and the #1 sniper in the world. Usopp clenched his fists hard and shouted loudly while standing on the shore. He actually doesn't hate his father, because he can understand his father's decision. He and his father have the same character, pursuing freedom, and they can feel the call of the pirate flag. However, my mother did not wait for my father until she died of illness. This is a hurdle in his heart that he cannot bypass. He wanted to surpass his father and punch him in the face for his mother. Usopp, Nami, Chopper and the others have never seen such serious eyes from Usopp. Usopp, who has always been timid, dared to shoot this bullet in the face of the 4 Emperor's red hair pirates. I see. Usopp standing on the Red Force whispered first, and then swung his gun vigorously towards the shore. I will wait for you in New World. Red Force dived slowly to the surface of the sea. On the deck, Usopp looked complicated and picked up a bottle of wine. Zailuobu village has always been something he wanted to forget, but he couldn't ignore it. In the past, he abandoned his children and wife in order to go to sea, and after becoming a pirate, he dared not have any contact with them. Hey, Usopp, is that your son? He's grown so much. What a nice young man. The partner of the red hair pirates wanted to comfort Usopp, but didn't know what to say. That is Usopp's family business, even they are not easy to intervene. That kid, he regards you as the best sniper in the world, Usopp. The redhead sat next to Usopp, and said calmly. The boy with the long nose spoke resentment, but in his heart, he always regarded his father as a brave sea warrior and the world's #1 sniper. At the side, finally came the man's faint whimper. Usopp him, he's grown so much, it's great to see him again. On the Sabaody archipelago, the Red Force had completely sunk to the bottom of the sea, and Usopp stood on the shore, clenching his fists hard. I must be the best sniper in the world, Luffy. Usopp said in a low voice. Of course I know, I never doubted it. Luffy laughed. Just like he believed at the beginning, Zoro would definitely become the world's #1 swordsman. No matter how huge the gap between him and Hawkeye was at the beginning, he has always believed in his partner, and he has always believed in it till now. About Usopp and Red Hair Pirates Usopp, Nami didn't ask much. And on the other side, not far from the Straw Hat Pirates, Douglas Bullet and Burndy World also sneered as they watched the redhead leave. Buggy, have you guys made up your mind yet? Rayleigh frowned at Buggy in front of him. Buggy's face was obviously full of fear, but he still chose to leave with Bullet, World and the others. I've made up my mind, Captain Rayleigh. Buggy glanced at Bullet and World, his eyes rolling, wondering what he was thinking. Since it's your decision. Rayleigh nodded. Although Bullet and World are dangerous to the naked eye, and although Buggy is indeed a little weak, he is not very worried. Buggy has been on the Luogia boat for so long. Rayleigh also knew something about that strange strong luck. Buggy's strength is not strong, but strangely, the development of a matter will always inexplicably develop in favor of Buggy. Hey, Straw Hat Boy, do you want to join forces and deal with Marine and World government? Bullet yelled at Luffy. His ferocious and stern eyes looked back and forth at Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, and Chopper. There are a lot of powerful monsters in this small pirate group with a small number of people. Let him have a little heart. I'm not that interested in dealing with Marine and World government, I'm still sailing with my partner. Luffy frowned at Bullet. He didn't like this strong man full of madness. In that case, that's really a pity. A crazy smile appeared on Bullet's face. Then, when we meet next time, we will be enemies, and I am still very interested in you. Although it is not clear how Luffy performed in the previous war. But Luffy's terrifying atmosphere in the fifth gear still left a deep impression on Bullet at the time. Pursue strength, pursue the strongest lunatic, and will not let such a good opponent go. Luffy frowned, and Zoro behind him immediately opened a gap in the autumn water around his waist with his thumb, ready to strike at any time. Hey, Bullet, Buggy, Crocodile, it. At this moment, Burndy World shouted in the distance. Bullet smiled wildly at Luffy, then left with his majestic body shaking. See you again, New World, Straw Hat, I. There is still an account to be settled between us. Crocodile bit his cigar and looked at Luffy grimly. Crocodile. Luffy was a little disgusted, and looked at Crocodile with some seriousness. This opponent who once brought him great trouble. For some reason, Luffy always felt that something had changed in Crocodile in front of him, his temperament had changed. Even though he has become so much stronger, Crocodile can still give him a dangerous feeling. But more of his attention was on Bullet. The strength of that brawny man is terrifying, not inferior to a Kainu at all, even faintly stronger than a Kainu. What the hell is going on with that Bullet, Uncle Rayleigh? Quote. After Bullet and the others left completely, Luffy folded his arms, tilted his head, and asked a little puzzled. He seems to be on the Luogia pirate ship, why does he feel like so annoying? Quote. Even partners on the same boat have different wills. Rayleigh sighed, and said lightly, don't look at Bullet now, he was far from being so crazy before. He is a genius, a real genius. He was able to draw with me at the age of 15, and he has been challenging Luogia without fear. At that time, Bullet was just a boy who pursued strength. Just after Luogia was diagnosed with a terminal illness, Bullet, who respected Luogia the most, completely changed. He was confused about power and partners, which made him lose his direction. In the end, he left. Opened the Luogia pirates. Quote. After Luogia was executed, Bullet made a mess of the world. Later, I heard that Sengoku Garp took Buster Call to surround him. Now it seems that after that, he has completely. The bottom is lost in the calendar. So, Luffy. Rayleigh looked at Luffy and said, as long as Bullet is not defeated, he will definitely fight with you. I want to ask you, don't kill him, just beat him, he is only in pain temporarily. Lost in misery. Quote. Bullet, by its very nature, isn't bad. Rayleigh is very accurate in seeing people, and Bullet has always had a will to protect in his heart, but for some reason, this will has been distorted. Distorted into an outright quest for power. Both he and Luogia once wanted to drive away the haze in Bullet's heart. It's just a twist of fate that Luogia doesn't have enough time. Instead, Bullet was further stimulated. That man's nature is not bad. The corners of Nami's mouth twitched, that big, scary man, like a madman. I see, Uncle Rayleigh. Luffy laughed, leaving aside the fact that Rayleigh has helped them so much. Well, that's not too much to ask. And, speaking of it, he doesn't like killing people either. Your boat, I asked the shipwrights of the Whitebeard pirates to help you plate it. You can choose to go to the Fishman Island tomorrow, or you can choose to play on Sabaody for 2 days. Rayleigh smiled and said, it happens that Xiaoba and Kami are also there. Xiaoba and Kami haven't left yet. Luffy said with a smile. They insist on waiting for you and taking you to the Fishman Island. Then play for 2 days. Luffy thought for a while and said, didn't Kami say her dream is an amusement park in Sabaody? Playground. Come on. Chopper and Usopp immediately became excited. The other members, seeing that the captain had already spoken, naturally had no problem. And their boat is not so conspicuous in Sabaody. If Marine really sends someone over, they can dive away with the coated boat at any time. No. 60 Sabaody. This is where the Marine and World Government personnel are stationed. Momo. 100 times faster. Burndy World picked up some gravel and knocked down the fleeing Marine soldiers in the distance. Bullet waved his majestic arms, and every time he punched, it was like a storm was blowing up, sending countless soldiers directly into the sky. In just a moment's time, all the Marine garrison soldiers were eliminated by the two. Including those pacifists who made Supernova feel extremely difficult. In front of the two of them, they were no different from moving scrap iron. Hey, Bullet, isn't your goal marine and world government? Do you want to join forces? Burndy World smiled with a toothless mouth. Standing in the marine port of Sabaody archipelago, they can snatch the marine warship and leave. But when they parted ways, World was somewhat reluctant. It's not reluctance, but whether it's Bullet or Crocodile, their strength is far stronger than their original partners. In order to avenge the world government, the world needs this powerful force. Chapter 73 King's Pirates. Zoro Bounty. Advertise here. Burndy World trusts no one. Ever since he was betrayed by the people he trusted the most decades ago, he never believed in any friendship anymore. Speaking of which, the betrayal he accepted was comparable to that of Bullet when he was young. Almost everything in life was completely negated by that huge betrayal. Escaping from the Impel prison, his only thought at the moment was revenge. Apart from revenge, there was nothing that could stir his heartstrings. If it weren't for the belief in revenge to support him, I am afraid that at his age, he would not have such a strong fighting power. A man whose heart is full of angry revenge flames is very scary. Cooperate. Bullet took a deep look at Burndy World. The eyes of this extremely old monster from the old times were filled with the same madness as him. And full distrust of the world. This is the same person as him, they have experienced almost the same experience, except for their own strength, nothing else is worthy of trust. However, the difference is, the world is old, he no longer has the pursuit of power and the strongest position in his heart, and some only have revenge. Dreams, pursuits, all vanished with the aging body and the betrayal of the closest people. Of course we can cooperate. Bullet laughed wildly. But, if you are useless, I will not hesitate to throw you away, old guy from the old days. After Luo Jia's death, Bullet has completely given up the concept of partners. He believes that a partner will only drag a person down. Let him have scruples in his heart, the will to fight will be weakened, and the punches will not be strong enough and fast enough. Therefore, he only believes in his own strength, and wants to use his own strength to ascend to the strongest position in the world. And launching revenge against the Marine and world government who imprisoned him is nothing more than to hone his strength and become the strongest supporter. However, Bullet is no fool. Before he raises his strength to the level where he can challenge the whole world by himself, he needs helpers to deal with the siege of Marine and world government. Of course, this helper is not a partner. Just like when he was a soldier in that country, cannon fodder, subordinates, can be discarded anytime and anywhere. Of course, with the pride of Bullet, we will not do anything deceitful, and we have made this point very clear before the cooperation. Me too, kid. Burndy World's eyes were cold, sharp and terrifying, and he grinned with a toothless mouth and said with a sneer, don't put your hopes on it, I will save you because of the shitty companionship. 570, that would be the best. Bullet's eyes didn't move at all. Then add me. Crocodile was smoking a cigar, exhaling the smoke lightly. He sat on a cushion made up of several unconscious Marine soldiers, looked at Bullet and World and said indifferently. Boss. Mr. One's face behind Crocodile changed slightly, wanting to say something. But Crocodile waved his hand lightly, and he swallowed his words. In his opinion, both Burndy World and Bullet are too dangerous, and their strength is too strong. For them to cooperate, the risk is too great. There is a high probability that these two lunatics will trap them. But since Crocodile's determination is very strong, Mr. One can't refute the boss anymore. Loyal as he is, it's only a matter of following in Crocodile's footsteps. Your strength is really not bad, Valorolo. Burndy World looked at Crocodile who was sitting on the side and said indifferently. I heard that you are the current Shichibukai, okay, I agree with your joining, brat. Quote. You're finally awake, Crocodile. Bullet commented with a condescending smile on his face. Crocodile used to be a genius pirate, and when he was young, he won't lose against him. However, so many years have passed. Not only did his strength not increase, but it regressed. Because his will regressed, that annoying, sinister spirit. But now, his courage finally had a transformation. It's been too long, it's really a terrible thing to pursue the wrong path. Crocodile said lightly. Once upon a time, he also competed for the most powerful positions in New World, but after the battle with Whitebeard, his fighting will was completely broken. Under the monster strength of the strongest man in the world. Therefore, he gave up improving himself and set his goal on the illusory ancient weapon Pluton. For so many years, it's like having a bad dream. Crow took a deep breath, quietly, but lost the light. And this cooperation is a good opportunity, why doesn't he know the danger of Bullet and Burndy World? But their strength is beyond doubt. Moreover, if you don't even have the qualifications to stand side by side with these two lunatics. That can only show that he is only a man of this level. Crocodile thought a lot in the eternal hell on the 6th floor, CGEE, after being defeated by Luffy. He thought of the reason why he failed, and lived too comfortably. Shichibukai's comfort zone almost made him useless, like a knife, gradually rusting. Now he has to constantly oppress himself before he can return to the peak, or go one step further. The long-lost sense of urgency is really a little addictive. Crocodile looked sharply at Bullet and Burndy World in front of him. So what about a madman? Who isn't a madman? It's only decent now. Bullet was condescending and smiled with satisfaction. Hey, Buggy, don't you want to join us? Bullet called to Buggy not far away. Bullet didn't have much of an impression of this weak poor guy, but he didn't have much disgust for this man who was once on the same boat. Of course I join. Buggy's body fluttered in the sky with a flattering expression on his face. By the time Bullet looked away, Buggy's grin had turned menacing, shadow covering his entire face. After this war, the world will be in turmoil. Even if I go back to East Blue, I won't be able to live comfortably without manpower. I might as well rely on the history of these stupid lunatics. The most dangerous place is the safest place. This is the wisdom of my Uncle Buggy. Buggy flew out his palm, touched his chin, and smiled smugly. He has a clear vision of the next world pattern. The news of Whitebeard's death can't be concealed for a few days. Coupled with the overall defeat of the Marine World Government, pirates from the Four Seas and the Grand Line will continue to set off. With his strength and lack of a partner, even if he returns to East Blue, there is a high probability that he will be defeated by a newcomer monster that may appear. Or if Marine strengthens his control over the world, he will not live comfortably. Instead of this, it is better to join Bullet them. After all, although these guys are crazy, their strength is absolutely worthless. The combination of these three people is comparable to a group of 4 emperors. When the time comes, he, Buggy, can also get a good position by the way. Coupled with the fact that none of these people seem to be greedy for money, he might be able to take the opportunity to make a lot of money. He is planning to start a pirate company and needs startup capital very much. Hey, that red-nosed brat, you mutter too loudly. The voice of World rang in Buggy's ears, making the latter's hairs explode instantly. But World didn't care. All he had in mind was revenge, and it didn't matter what Buggy thought, as long as he could survive the next action. What shall we do next? Buggy rubbed his hands, and said flatteringly. Go destroy it. Let Marine summon Buster Call, but I still want to taste the taste of Buster Call. Bullet pressed his hand on the hideous wound on his chest, licked the corner of his mouth, and looked crazy. Why don't you go find a shipbuilder? I need the biggest cannon, as long as the caliber is big enough. With the ability of my Momo fruit, I can blast Mariajoy into the sky with one blow. Valorolo. Quote, comma. World is crazier than Bullet. Buggy looked at the two of them, wondering if it was too late for him to go back to Captain Rayleigh. These two people are a little too crazy, and he can't stand it. Since the goal is to fight against the world government, then I have a good candidate. Crocodile stood up with a cigar in his mouth, and said with deep eyes. Sabaody Archipelago. Mangrove No. 42, Sabaody Playground. A flock of newspaper birds flew across the sky suddenly, and then the newspapers were scattered like snowflakes. Another free newspaper reign. Only when a major event occurs in this world, will there be such a free newspaper because of the scale. It is to pass the news of the big event to all parts of the world. Is it an incident from that previous war? Nami sat on a merry-go-round and reached out to catch a newspaper falling from the sky. This time the newspaper is thicker than the previous world economic news, and it contains more content than usual. Nami opened the newspaper and saw a huge front page. The worst pirate group was born, surpassing 4 emperors. 20 years after Luogia, another pirate group of kings was born. What is this? Exaggerated enough. Nami smiled subconsciously, and then continued to look down. Marine, world government planned the execution of Luogia's bloodline, Fire Fist Ace, but ended in failure. This world's largest war is known as the Top Battle. Next, let's analyze thoroughly why Marine lost in this top battle. That's because of the emergence of the Straw Hat Pirates, the worst pirate group that surpassed the 4 Emperors' pirates, which inherited Luogia's will. Nami froze for a moment. What? The King's Pirates. The worst pirates. Us. What the hell is this? Shaki's ripped off bar. Ha ha ha. Rayleigh held the newspaper in his hand, as if he saw something extremely funny. He laughed so hard that tears were about to come out. What is this? Marine and the government reporters are too exaggerated. The King's Pirates surpassed the 4 Emperors' pirates. Have inherited the power left by the Luogia pirates. Ha ha ha. Do we still have that kind of thing? In this way, Little Monkey and the others will be put on fire by Marine and the government. Those arrogant guys in New World value these things very much. Shaki exhaled and reminded. New Worlds. The group of 4 emperors, almost all are lunatics. Redhead and Whitebeard pirates are all right. Kaido, Bigmom are all conceited lunatics. Looking down on newcomers, the methods are cruel. This report will definitely attract the attention of the two of them. Moreover, besides these 4 emperors lunatics, New World still has many great pirates who want to become famous. Luffy and the others have been targeted by the world government. It doesn't matter. Rayleigh's eyes were deep, with an interested smile. Luffy and the others are very strong, and they can't be solved by such small tricks. Marine and. On the contrary, the government has made a name for them, which is very good. Quote. Besides, those guys in New World should have moved a long time ago. What's the point of a sea like stagnant water? Let Luffy go to New World to make a fuss. Phew, are you that confident? Rayleigh. Those monsters of the New World. Shaki was a little surprised. The monsters of the new era are the monsters of the old era, which one is stronger? Anyway, I am more optimistic about the former. Rayleigh's eyes were calm and confident. Shimotsuki Village, Ishin Dojo. Master Koshiro, look quickly, Brother Zoro. He was firmly suppressed in the battle against the world's #1 swordsman Haki in the top battle. A group of kids about 10 years old, dressed in priestly robes, rushed into the dojo and said to Shimotsuki Koshiro. Shimotsuki Koshiro is a middle-aged man with a high forehead, round eyes, and wearing a priest robe. He squints his eyes all the year round, looking very gentle and kind. Since Zoro joined the Straw Hat Pirates and became more and more famous, their Ishin gym has more and more apprentices. It doesn't matter if it's a pirate or not. East Blue is originally a lot of islands. These islands are governed by kingdoms one by one in name, but in fact the control power is very low. For the kingdom, the world government does not have much sense of belonging. On the contrary, it is more about the pursuit of strength. Zoro's high bounty has attracted a large number of teenagers who want to gain strength to join. A group of children crowded around and handed the newspaper to Koshiro. The above scene is exactly the scene of Zoro's 3 swordsmen fighting with Haki. The shot was very clever. Zoro fell from the sky, using the power of the fall to strengthen his slash. It looked like he suppressed Haki. In fact, Koshiro could tell that the two sides were not really fighting with all their might, but just sparring at the level of swordsmanship. The suppression mentioned in the newspaper is obviously exaggerated. But no matter what, he was able to compete with Haki to this extent on that battlefield. Obviously, Zoro's swordsmanship has been raised to a level similar to that of Haki. How about it, Master Koshiro? Is this Brother Zoro from our gym? The apprentices around asked urgently. Ah, it's Zoro's. Koshiro nodded mildly. After the children ran out happily, he carefully stroked Zoro's photo on the newspaper. He fumbled for the handle he was biting in his mouth and said a word. You are getting closer and closer to your goal, Zoro. You must have suffered a lot. Although Koshiro didn't know why Zoro's sword skills improved so quickly, it didn't prevent him from being sincerely happy for Zoro. After a while, he got up, walked into a room in the gymnasium. On the small table in this room, there is a photo of a girl. The girl smiled happily, holding a white knife in her hand that looked extremely simple. You will be very relieved to see this scene in heaven, Kuina, Zoro. He really, as he said, carried your dream on his back and stood at the top of the swordsman. Koshiro took off his glasses and gently wiped the crystals from the corners of his eyes. Then the newspaper printed a picture of Zoro falling from the sky, slashing at Haki with a knife, and reported. Placed in front of Kuina's photo. In the most reported section, Zoro's latest reward list is printed. On the reward list, Zoro's head was wrapped in a turban, his eyes were glowing red, and his entire shirt was completely torn, revealing just the right amount of muscular muscles. He is biting a knife with a white handle in his mouth, which is the famous knife and Taui characters. Holding 3rd generation Onitsu and black sword Shisui in their hands respectively. With a terrifying spirit, behind him faintly condensed into a hellish Ashura. He bent his body slightly, and the 3 knives seemed to be able to swing out of the picture at any time, bursting out with terrifying slashes. Like a tiger that chooses and devours. The 3 famous knives are the sharp minions of the tiger. Below the photo, Straw Hat Pirates, Deputy Captain. Roronoa Zoro, Live or Die, Bounty. 2 billion berry. Chapter 74 Martial Marine and the World Conscription. Advertise here. See Restaurant Barati. Zapu was holding a newspaper and reading it. The wooden right leg prosthesis stabilized his body, and a smile appeared on his always serious face at this moment. This kid, has he grown to this point? Not far from Zapu, several chefs who were cooking whispered in confusion. What's the matter with the old man today? His stinky face actually smiled. It seems to be because of that newspaper. While the chefs were whispering, a chef rushed in from the outside, holding up the newspaper in his hand high. Sanji, he has completely become famous. Where? Sanji the brat. A moment later, a group of people gathered around the newspaper, their faces full of surprise and shock. In the newspaper, the man with black flames burning under his feet was confronting Admiral Kizaru head-on, not losing the wind. Hey, boss, what level of power is Admiral? Several chefs scratched their heads, looked at Japu and asked. Many of them are ordinary chefs and have never been to the Grand Line. They really don't know what Admiral stands for. Admiral, that is the top powerhouse in the sea, the supreme combat power of Marine, each one is a real monster. Zap explained with a rare smile. But you guys, if you can't understand, just look at that boy Sanji offering a bounty. Zapu said with a very concealed smug look on his face, as if showing off his child to others. So many zeros. Bounty. 1.9 billion berry. A group of chefs were instantly shocked. 1.9 billion berry, the one they saw was the leader of the largest pirate group in East Blue, Crick, and the bounty offered was only 17 million berry. And Sanji's bounty is more than 100 times that of this creek. Wait, why is there a smell of paste? Zapu had a happy face at first, but suddenly he frowned. After looking at the food that was burnt because the chefs gathered around to read the newspapers. He became irritable in an instant. You bastards, how dare you waste food, continue to make a portion, and eat all of these burnt food. Understood. A group of chefs were beaten by Zapu with a chef's hat and ran away. After a while, Zapu walked out of the kitchen, came to Baladi's deck, looked at the blue sea, and said calmly. You have grown beyond my imagination. Sanji, go for it, take my dream and find the legendary ocean. West Rob Village. Miss, look quickly, Usopp's information. The door of the mansion was pushed open forcefully, and Mei Li, with curly white hair like a sheep, rushed in with a copy of the latest newspaper. Under the sunlight on the second floor, in front of the window facing a big tree. Kaya quickly closed the medical book in her hand, went up to meet her, and took Usopp's newspaper. On the screen, there is a photo of Usopp standing on the Moby Dick, wearing the mask of the Sniper King and pulling out the giant slingshot pocket. It looks imposing. When she first saw the photo with the mask of the Sniper King, Kaya was stunned for a moment. But when she saw the iconic long nose and the familiar clothes, she recognized it at a glance. This is Usopp. There is very little written about Usopp, just a photo and a few words. But below the report, there is a reward order for Usopp. Straw Hat Pirate Sniper, Usopp. Live or die. The amount of the reward, Tien 500 million berry. The extremely high reward amount. In terms of his record, this amount is already very high, surpassing 99% of the pirates in the current sea. He became a brave sea warrior, exactly as he said he would. Kaya hugged the newspaper in her arms and murmured happily. She couldn't help but look out of the window, which was on the big tree. Usopp once sat on the trunk of this tree, told her stories one by one, and accompanied her through the most difficult days. I also want to work hard to learn medical skills. After Usopp returns from the sea, he can heal his injuries well. Kaya clenched her fist cutely, cheering up. Miss Kaya. Suddenly there was a child's yelling outside the window. Kaya poked her head out of the window and saw a child about 10 years old. This is a member of Usopp Pirates in Sarab Village. After Usopp went to sea, he changed his name to Usopp Self-Defense Group, which are Green Pepper Head, Carrot Head and Onion Head. The three kids adore Usopp crazily. Miss Kaya, have you seen it? Captain Usopp's newspaper. Carrot Head shook the newspaper in his hand and said loudly. I see, Usopp Big Brother has succeeded. Kaya also shook the newspaper in her hand, and said with a gentle smile. How, it's the same as I said, Captain Usopp, he is a man who can turn all lies into the present world. Onion shouted loudly. Kaya was in front of the window, smiling softly, never had a day as happy as today. Mei Li stood aside, also with a smile on her face. It seemed to recall the day when that special group of pirates came to the island. Drum Kingdom. Dr. Doriel was holding a wine bottle, looking at the newspaper in her hand, with a nostalgic smile on her face. Really, become like this monster. In the newspaper, Chopper's muscles were pumping, his fur was bursting, and his eyes were scarlet, like a crazy beast. However, compared to his record, defeat the former Marine Admiral Zephyr, already very strong. Straw Hat Pirates Dr. Tony Chopper. Live or die. Bounty, 1.4 billion berry. Hey, did you see that? Stupid Silk, your stupid apprentice, has grown up completely. Dr. Doriel walked to a cross in the heavy snow. Then put the newspaper on the cross and put all the wine in the bottle on it. The wine wet the newspaper and stuck it to the cross. Even the wind and snow could not blow the newspaper away. Goa Kingdom, Windmill Village. Hey, Makino, another bottle of wine. A stout woman with a flushed face was holding a newspaper in her hand and was yelling loudly. Dayton, you can't drink any more. The gentle Makino looked at Dayton, worried. Makino, just give the boss another bar, it's okay, we will carry her back. The two younger brothers of Dayton's family said. Boss is so happy, Ace was rescued. Who cares about that bastard brat Ace? Dayton hiccuped and cursed. And that bastard Luffy, as a pirate, rushed to naval headquarters, isn't it dangerous? That old bastard Garp is too, isn't he right next to Ace? Why don't you save Ace? If Ace dies, I'll beat that old bastard to death. The younger brother of Dayton's family can only watch Dayton play drunk. Beating Garp or something, the boss of Dayton is most afraid of Garp, and he can only talk about it when he is drunk. But they are also not surprised. After all, Dayton would scold Kakuo every time he was drunk. But Luffy Ace they're alright, which is great. Makino glanced at the newspaper. She didn't care about the bounty or anything, all she cared about was that Ace and Luffy were okay. The first half of the Grand Line, Paradise. Isle of White Clay, Palazzo Bardi. The headquarters of the Revolutionary Army is located on this hidden island. What are you looking at, Mr. Long, so happy? Revolutionary Army General Staff Sabo walked up to Long and asked. Ah, this. News about my son. Long Yong raised the newspaper in his hand, revealing his side face engraved with patterns, and said with a smile. Straw Hat Kid. The Straw Hat Kid who made a big fuss at naval headquarters, is Mr. Long's son. Sabo took the newspaper and said in surprise. But when he saw Fire Fist Ace and the Straw Hat Boy, he fell into a kind of absent-mindedness inexplicably, and his head ached slightly. Leave that alone, Sabo. Long didn't notice Sabo's abnormality at all, but said, try to find a way to contact Ivankov, the world is about to usher in turmoil, we can almost make preparations for action in advance. The dragon's expression was a little excited. He has been waiting for an opportunity. An opportunity to overthrow the world government, but the strength of the Revolutionary Army is far worse than that of the world government. So they can only lie dormant, waiting for the changes in the world situation and the weakening of the world government. And now is this time, the battle on the top, the plans of Marine and world government have completely failed. The control and credibility of the world government has dropped to an extremely low level at this moment. They can take advantage of this opportunity to overthrow the rule of some decadent royal families, and set off a real revolution in the Four Seas in the first half of the Grand Line. Sabo. Long did not get a response from Sabo for a long time, and couldn't help turning his head to look. What I saw was Sabo, who was staring at the newspaper, covering his head with a painful face. Naval Headquarters, Marineford. Marineford is still under emergency construction at the moment. The previous war almost destroyed this island located in the center of the Grand Line. But Marine's architects are obviously already very experienced. Marineford is an island full of disasters. The presence of Naval Headquarters, while representing a powerful deterrent, will also attract attacks from some real lunatics. Like 20 years ago, shortly after the execution of One Piece Gordy Luogia ended. The man who single-handedly broke into Marineford and destroyed the entire Marineford, the man named Golden Lion. At this moment, next to the ruins, there is a temporary meeting room for the ministers. Garp was reading a newspaper and laughed. Hey, this is too exaggerated. The pirates of the king inherited the power left by the Luogia pirates. Can things like power be inherited? Do these people who write newspapers really have brains? ... Ask for flowers. The 5 emperors who surpassed the 4 emperors. How funny. Garp picked up the tea and took a sip. But just after drinking it, I couldn't help but spit it out with a smile. There are more and more tic-tac-toe on Sengoku's forehead. Finally, after Garp had a funny laugh, Sengoku punched Garp directly on the head. Feel sorry. Garp apologized with the bag on his head. Do not. But when he saw the newspaper again, he still couldn't help it. He could only cover his mouth with both hands, laughing until tears came out. Can't really blame Garp either. It is really this report, what is written is too outrageous, and it is completely flattering. Straw Hat Luffy easily defeated Admiral Akainu. It is true that he was defeated, but it cannot be said that it was easy. In fact, after defeating Akainu, Luffy's physical strength was almost exhausted. Relying on Rubber Fruit's strange ability after awakening, it's just overdrawing his physical strength over and over again. His real strength, compared with the 4 emperors in full form, should be 50-50, or Luffy's chances of winning are a little higher. It depends on whose will is strong enough and whose physical strength can persist until the end. Luffy's 5th gear is strong, but the energy consumption is very fast. Those 4 emperors, such as Kaido and Bigmom, their physical strength and defensive power are all monster level. Even if Luffy is in 5th gear, they may not be able to defeat them. It will even be dragged abruptly until the end of physical strength. However, here, in order to reflect the danger of Luffy, Luffy's strength is directly exaggerated to an exaggerated level. And this, Roronoa Zoro is firmly suppressing Hawkeye. He is the world's #1 swordsman. Roronoa's strength is indeed very strong, but it is an exaggeration to say that he can firmly suppress Hawkeye. That man, the Lone Ranger in Shichibukai, is comparable to the redhead. Strong. All in all, World Economic News has exaggerated to a certain extent the achievements and strengths of all members of the Straw Hat Pirates. In fact, in this war, the captains of the Whitebeard Pirates held back many strong men. However, some of the effects of the Whitebeard Pirates are hidden here, and they are imposed on the Straw Hat Pirates. In fact, Garp is also very clear that this is the means of the above group of people. But it doesn't matter, he really thinks it's funny. Okay, Garp, the instructions from above are down. Sengoku glared at Garp, and then at the temporary meeting room, where almost all of Marine's top fighters gathered. Garp, Zephyr, Crane, Aokiji, Akainu, Ape, as well as Momosuke and T-Dolphin. Because of the failure of the top battle this time, I have been completely removed from the post of Marine Marshal. Therefore, the first point is that we must choose the next Marine Marshal as soon as possible. Sengoku said calmly, although it has been known for a long time that Sengoku was likely to retire, but when he actually heard the news, everyone was still a little surprised. Mr. Sengoku, Aokiji couldn't help but speak. They all knew the failure of the Summit War this time, and they couldn't blame Sengoku, because the opponent's strength had completely surpassed them. It is crushed by hard power. Sengoku has already drafted Zephyr, Momosuke, T-Pig in advance, but it still failed. Yes, this matter has been finalized, and I am tired, and I am getting older, and I can't bear it anymore. Quote. Sengoku waved his hands and said, the new generation of pirates has grown up. Our marine can no longer be supported by a group of old guys. Later, whoever is interested in the position of marshal should report to me, and I will report to the higher-ups and let them do the next step. Decided. Just. The position of Marshal of Marine. Aokiji's eyes flashed and he became firm. In Admiral's position, he can only see the darkness, but cannot change it. If he really achieves the position of Marine Marshal, will he be able to carry out real reforms? Let Marine really fight for justice, instead of being reduced to a violent weapon to maintain the rule. Aokiji has made up his mind. He could no longer be confused. This last fight even determines his future. Marshal Marine. Akainu clenched his fists tightly. He wanted to fight for the position of Marshal of the Marine. The current Marine is too weak, which will lead to the proliferation of pirates. If he can become the Marine Marshal, he will be able to implement absolute and thorough justice. Marshal Marine, what a trouble. Kizaru glanced at Aokiji beside him and Akainu on the other side from the corner of his eye, scratched his head, and thought to himself. Anyway, he didn't have any idea about this troublesome position, whoever wanted to be the one should do it. He just needs to get to and from get off work on time. We'll talk about it after the Marshal's selection meeting is over. The next thing to do is to prepare for the expansion of the army. Sengoku looked at the crowd and said. The meaning above is that regardless of seniority or contribution, only in terms of strength, a large-scale conscription will be carried out worldwide. As long as the strength is strong enough, the highest rank of admiral can be given. Chapter 75 Luffy's Reward, all members soar. Advertise here. What? Only about strength. Admiral title. Sengoku's words undoubtedly stirred up waves with one stone. Marine, as an army force, has existed to this day and has its own complete promotion system. They are not pirates. As long as they have enough strength, they can instantly become the top of the pirate group. They are Marines, with insufficient contributions and insufficient qualifications. No matter how strong they are, it is impossible to confer high positions. Just like the current Admiral Kizaru, who only joined the Marine at the age of 26. Before joining the Marine, he had extremely strong strength. After joining the Marine, he has the strength of being called a monster. However, even so, it is necessary to start step by step from recruit. At the age of 46, I was still only Vice Admiral, and it took nearly 10 years to become Admiral. If it were any pirate group, with Kizaru's strength, it could have become the second in command existence 20 years earlier. This is the Marine system, and justice is built on the basis of a good and perfect order and system. And now, there is no doubt that the meaning above is to completely break Marine's promotion system. Regardless of qualifications, regardless of contribution. I am afraid that regardless of character. Of course, the current Marine income does not depend on personality. The somewhat cruel Vice Admiral attacked opponents at will, and the people above turned a blind eye. It's just, if someone really airborne Admiral because of his strength. This is unfair to a lot of people in Marine, especially those who have made a lot of contributions, such as Alternate Admiral, Momosuke and T. Dolphins. Alternate Admiral's position is to fill Admiral's vacancy. 3 Admirals, after Sengoku retires, the position of Marshal must be selected from among the Admirals, and the vacant Admiral position will be selected from among the alternate Admirals. Sengoku, do you need to think about this matter? Crane propped his chin with both hands, frowned and looked at Sengoku, and said calmly. As the General Staff of 360 Marine, she is well aware of the drawbacks of this matter. From a short-term point of view, it may have a great improvement in strength, but the destruction of the overall Marine system will have a very bad impact. Garp didn't speak, drinking his tea in silence. This kind of thing is not something he needs to think about too much. Sengoku and Suru will consider all aspects of the matter thoroughly. Zephyr closed his eyes and rested his mind. He hadn't thought about these things for a long time. Although he had always belonged to the high level, after his arm was broken, because of revenge against the pirates, he gradually stopped participating in the high-level affairs. I still oppose this matter. Aokiji thought for a while, and said in a low tone, the middle and lower levels of Marine have a lot of soldiers who are fighting hard. Although this war failed, their contribution is indelible. If such a large conscription is carried out at this time, because of their strength, their contribution will be wiped out. This is too unfair to the middle and low-level Marines. Aokiji's personality is gentle and emotional, so he considers the interests of the bottom Marines who are fighting hard. The world conscription will parachute a large number of Marine officers and generals because of their strength. These positions are occupied by those Marine soldiers who may be promoted because of their contributions. I agree with the big conscription plan above. The failure of the previous war has clearly exposed the problem of our Marine. We are too weak to make the pirates so rampant. In order to combat the increasingly rampant pirates, our Marine needs stronger power, enough to completely annihilate the pirates. Akainu clenched his fists tightly, and the black gloves became brighter with his excited emotions. The hot temperature melted a corner of the table. What a shame. He can still remember that the Straw Hat Boy fell from the sky and drove him directly into the bottom of the sea. We can't let pirates continue to run rampant like this. What's your opinion, Pelusolino? Sengoku looked at Kizaru, who was looking up, with his mouth crooked, and asked. Me. Kizaru was surprised when he heard the question, and then immediately showed an embarrassed expression. I think what both of them said makes sense, whether it's the bottom-level interests that Kuzan said, or the expansion power that Sakazuki said. Quote. It's really difficult, who should I choose? Upon hearing Kizaru's words, Sengoku couldn't help pinching the space between his eyebrows with some headaches. This bastard started messing with each other again. Kizaru used to be someone brought by Sengoku himself. Zephyr is equivalent to a recruit instructor, and he is equivalent to a teacher who leads by hand, just like the relationship between Garp and Kuzan. So, he knew Kizaru the bastard well. Whether it is wisdom or strength, Kizaru has no problems. Only this bastard's personality is ambiguous, does not disturb each other, is wise and safe, and hangs high. He is known as Marine Admiral, and those who are familiar with him know that he is like a mercenary in Marine. When others go to work, I catch fish. When others fight, I watch movies, clock in for work, and clock out for get off work. Apart from Garp, Kizaru is the worst guy in Marine. Forget it, I will report your attitude to this matter. Sengoku said with a headache. However, according to the meaning above, there is a high probability that the world's conscription will be promoted. We have lost too badly in this war. Is there anything else? If there is nothing else, I'm going to sail. Zephyr calmly opened his eyes. He still has to hunt pirates, because of the summit war, he hasn't set off for several days. Sengoku waved his hand helplessly. By the way, Pelusilino, get ready and go to Egghead. Sengoku suddenly remembered something and said to Kizaru. Did the old man research something dangerous again? Kizaru asked. But it is not exclusive at all. He was originally admiral who was guarding Vegapunk, but he was transferred back because of the top battle. In fact, he still likes the job of this bodyguard very much. Vegapunk isn't a bastard like celestial dragons, and there's still plenty of comfort in Egghead. Of course, the most important thing is, on the side of Egghead, he can fish the best. Anyway, Vegapunk himself is busy with research all day long, and a guard's defense is also very strong. Under normal circumstances, he doesn't need to make a move at all. Almost, the government is planning to transfer a large amount of resources to Egg for Vegapunk's research, and you are responsible for escorting these materials. Okay, I'll get ready right away. Kizaru stood up slowly, swayed his body and walked towards the outside. His steps were a little brisk. After escorting the supplies, I will continue to stay in Egghead, Mr. Sengoku. No, you are directly in New World, responsible for the actions against the four emperors at all times. Sengoku's voice came from behind. Kizaru's body stiffened visibly, then he sighed softly and left. Sabaody Archipelago Playground. A group of Straw Hat pirates were yelling around a newspaper. Luffy, you're totally famous. Nami held the newspaper, pointing to the photo of Luffy in the newspaper. As the protagonist of this war, Luffy has the most coverage. The captain of the Straw Hat Pirates, the Straw Hat Boy Monkey D. Luffy, the man who defeated Admiral head-on, behind him, stood the shadows of several big men. According to the information we have, the straw hat on the Straw Hat Kid's head was originally the straw hat of Pirate King Gordy Luogia, and then passed on to the red-haired Shanks, and now it is on the Straw Hat Kid's head. Judging from the achievements of these three people, we can make a bold guess that this straw hat inherits enormous power, and the strength of the man who wears this straw hat will improve by leaps and bounds. Super. Also, the blood of Luffy, the Straw Hat Kid, is not inferior to that of Fire Fist Ace. His father is the world's worst criminal, the leader of the Revolutionary Army, Dragon. This is also the world's most evil blood. With so many backgrounds, the Straw Hat Boy was able to stand on the top of the sea and easily defeat Admiral Sakazuki at the age of less than 20. Too exaggerated. Zoro couldn't help laughing. The World Economic News Office has indeed unearthed a lot of information. Even Luogia, the original owner of the Straw Hat, was unearthed, and Luffy's father, a dragon, was placed on it. It is constantly beautifying Luffy's record. All in all, the report of World Economic News just wants to highlight 2 points. First, Straw Hat Luffy has inherited the power of many well-known adults and criminals, which is why he is so powerful. Second, it is precisely because of the strength of the Straw Hat Boy and the appearance of the 2 Four Emperors pirates that Marine was caught off guard and failed. All in all, it is to demonize the strength of the Straw Hat pirates and find a way for the failure of Marine and the government. After all, the summit war this time was too much trouble. The confident world government broadcast live all over the world, it is impossible to suppress it. So simply put the Straw Hat pirates up. It is best to let the fear of the Straw Hat pirates in the hearts of the public overwhelm the rejection of the failure of the world government and Marine, and reduce the negative impact as much as possible. Luffy's bounty is 5.1 billion berry. Real or fake? Nami looked at the newspaper, rubbed his eyes. It was indeed 5.1 billion berry. It is simply an astronomical figure. To be honest, Nami's eyes turned into the shape of money at the moment. They took so much gold in the golden land of Sky Island, and they only sold 300 million berry, and now it's only Luffy's bounty. It is equivalent to 17 times their original Sky Island gold. There is another paragraph below. Usopp pointed to the newspaper under Luffy's bounty and read. The bounty offered by the Straw Hat Boy was negotiated and decided by the 5 elders, the world's most powerful people. It is worth mentioning that the reward of One Piece Gordy Luogia is 5.5648 billion berry, while the reward of the world's strongest man Whitebeard is only 5.546 billion berry. The bounty offered by the Straw Hat exceeds that of Whitebeard, the highest among the 4 emperors, and is second only to D. Luogia, the king of pirates. This has fully proved that the Straw Hat has completely surpassed the 4 emperors. Even, we can boldly predict that within 2 years, there will be another One Piece who conquers the Grand Line after Gordy Luogia. Hey, that Uncle Whitebeard's bounty is so high. Usopp was a little surprised. 5 billion berry, if there is no Luffy, this is second only to One Piece's bounty. 5.1 billion berry, it has grown a lot. Looking at himself on the bounty list, Luffy couldn't help laughing while pressing his straw hat. For pirates, the bounty is like a proof, and even many pirates regard the level of the bounty as a kind of honor. Yeah, what a high bounty. Nami looked at Luffy with wrong eyes, as if he was looking at a pile of huge moving banknotes. Hey, Nami, your eyes are so scary. Usopp looked into Nami's eyes and reminded, you don't want to sell Luffy. What are you talking about? Ha ha ha, Usopp, you really know how to joke. Nami smiled and patted Usopp on the shoulder vigorously. Then his eyes seemed to be half opened, and he squeezed Luffy's shoulders hard. Why are you the captain, Luffy? You are worth so much money. No, this person has rotted from the bottom of his heart. Usopp looked at Nami helplessly and said, look, our bounty. Zoro and Sanji snatched the newspaper and opened it. What? It's so different from Luffy. Although Zoro was disgusted, the smile on his face obviously couldn't stop. 2 billion berry, almost 20 times more than before. If it weren't for the fact that it was a bit far from Luffy's 5.1 billion berry, he would actually be very satisfied with this number. It is good. When he saw the latest bounty, Sanji clenched his fists and let out a loud cry. Then the whole person knelt down on the ground excitedly, hitting the ground hard. At this moment, he almost cried with joy. Finally, it's not the bounty list for abstract paintings. This latest reward list fully captures his handsomeness. With deep black flames and a black suit, he is simply too handsome. Hey, Sanji, there is another bounty list down here, and you have 2 bounty lists. Usopp flipped through the newspaper curiously. Sanji's report was in the corner of the first page. After opening it, there was actually a reward list on the back. Because the difference between the 2 reward lists is too obvious, in order to prevent misunderstandings, the reward list for Blackfoot Sanji will be distributed in 2 ways. Below is a bounty list. It is the bounty list of Sanji's abstract painting style before, and it is also the latest one. No. Sanji held his head. Give me the same amount as before. You just accept it, stinky cook, your stupid face is not as pleasing as the second one. Zoro walked up to Sanji and mocked condescendingly. Bastard, stinky swordsman, do you want to fight? Sanji stepped directly on Zoro's blade. If you fight, you will fight, you bastard with a bounty of 1.9 billion. If it weren't for those bastards, what kind of deputy captain would you be? Do you think you have 2 billion berry? The really noisy 2 guys, isn't it just a bounty? Usopp continued to flip through the newspaper. Then at 1.8 in an instant, his mouth stopped, his eyes widened, and cold sweat continued to break out on his face. Why is my bounty all 1.5 billion berry? Usopp held the newspaper, and the screams rang out over the entire Sabaody ground. A moment later, Usopp huddled in a corner, all white. 1.5 billion berry, I'm afraid he will be chased to death by a group of bounty hunters in his future life. And, why, his bounty is so high. Sanji and Zoro were in the Summit War, both with the admiral level of negotiators. And he just shot a few shots on the Moby Dick, the bounty is almost close to that of Zoro and Sanji. What Usopp doesn't know is, because at the most critical moment, the sniper shot that deflected Sengoku's attack made Sengoku completely remember this long-nosed bastard. It can be said that if Usopp and Fire Fist Ace were not dead, Summit War Marine would not be so ashamed. Therefore, with such a mood, Sengoku adjusted Usopp's bounty higher than that of the defeated Chopper. Not long after, Nami was also gray and crouched next to Usopp with his head in his arms. I just saw that although her bounty is not as high as Usopp's, it has already risen to 500 million. This high bounty made her a little scared. Hee, it's tall again. Robin looked at his bounty list and smiled. Her bounty jumps directly to 800 million berry, just because she is a member of the Straw Hat Pirates and a surviving scholar of Ohara. Finally not 50 Baileys. Chopper looked at the latest bounty list and almost cried out. When he was Eni's lobby, his record was not bad at all. In the end, he was given 50 Baileys as a pet. This Summit War, finally, washed away his shame, and he finally no longer appeared as a pet. Chapter 76. Setting sail for the New World, Garp Rayleigh sees him off. Advertise here. After cutting out all the reward orders from the newspaper. The latest bounties for all members of the Straw Hat Pirates have also been released. The captain, Monkey D. Luffy, has a bounty of 5.1 billion berry. The vice captain, Roronoa Zoro, has a bounty of 2 billion berry. The chef, Blackfoot Sanji, offers a bounty of 1.9 billion berry. Sniper, Usopp, Dangjin 500 million berry. The ship's doctor, Tony Chopper, offered a bounty of 1.4 billion berry. Devil's son, Nico Robin, offers a bounty of 800 million berry. Iron Man, Frankie, has a bounty of 650 million berry. No Song Brook, offering a reward of 550 million berry. Thief Cat, Nami, bounty, 500 million berry. This is the current bounty for all members of the Straw Hat Pirates. The total bounty offered by all members is close to 15 billion berry. Maybe the total reward amount is not as good as those of the 4 Emperors Pirates. But the number of the 4 Emperors Pirates is much larger than the Straw Hat Pirates. With the number of just 9 people and the total amount of bounty offered to this level, it can be said that the strength of the Straw Hat Pirates is beyond doubt. Of course, there must be some problems with the amount of this reward. For example, the bounty offered by Luffy is actually a bit high. Anyway, with his current fame and achievements, it is impossible to surpass Whitebeard, who has occupied the sea for so many years. Under normal circumstances, with his strength and current fame, the reward amount should be between 4 billion and 4.5 billion. It can only be said that the world government has indeed set the bounty a little bit high due to some other considerations and in order to flatter Luffy. Other relatively tall ones include Usopp, Nami, Brook, and Robin and Frankie. The performance of Usopp's Summit War is actually impossible to reach a bounty of 1.5 billion berry, let alone the 4 of Nami, Brook, Robin, and Frankie. If it weren't for the strength of the other members of the Straw Hat Pirates, they would be as strong as monsters. It is also impossible for Marine to directly increase their bounty from tens of millions to more than 500 million. Of course, they haven't evolved their combat power yet. If they evolve their combat power, the bounty of less than 1 billion will be a bit low for them. And there are certain high ones, and there are also certain ones that are slightly lower. The rewards for Zoro and Sanji are slightly lower. Under normal circumstances, for an existence whose strength can reach the admiral level, the bounty offered is at least 3 billion. With the real strength of Zoro and Sanji, the bounty should be more than 3 billion. But considering that they are all second in command and third in command, and the previous reward amount was too low. So it's just hovering around 2 billion for the time being. It is expected that the bounties of the Straw Hat Pirates, except for Luffy, will increase considerably after entering New World for a period of time. Of course, the premise is that they turn New World upside down. In fact, there is no need to consider this at all. This newspaper from World Economic News has spread all over the world in just a few days. New World, at this moment, I don't know how many pirates, and those big shots, are waiting for the Straw Hat Pirates to enter New World, and then deal with them and prepare to become famous. Don't look at the World Economic News newspapers blowing Luffy and the others to be terrible, and the bounty is very high. However, many of those who can reach the New World are lunatics who don't care about these at all. There are many pirates who challenge the 4 emperors every year. Compared with the old 4 emperors now, Luffy and the others, who have only one famous record and a high bounty, are undoubtedly a soft persimmon and a sweet potato. New World does not know how many people are eager to take their heads off. It's just that Luffy and the others don't care about these at the moment. They had a great time with Kami in Sabaody for 2 days. Although Sabaody seems to be a bit depressed at the moment because of the previous Summit War, it has to be said that this island is much more prosperous than all the islands that Luffy and the others have experienced before. Even in the depression state, there are many interesting places. At the end of the game, Kami did not hide her identity as a mermaid at all, but even so, no one came to have any bad thoughts about Kami and Xiaoba. The prestige of the Straw Hat Pirates is like a nuclear bomb in the first half of the Grand Line. Not to mention the nobles. The Straw Hats, a few days ago, attacked the Celestial Dragons in front of everyone. The results of it, now appearing majestically in the Sabaody archipelago, the naval headquarters, which is so close, did not send any troops at all. The meaning behind it is already very clear. In the short term, even naval headquarters can't afford to mess with it. 2 days later, Shaki's rip off. Thank you, dear Luffy, if it weren't for you, I might not be able to play on this Sabaody ground in my life. Kami was carrying a small shell bag, and bowed deeply to Luffy and the others excitedly. She knew very well why she was able to play peacefully these days. On this Sabaody archipelago, which discriminates against murlocs and mermaids, what does it mean for her alone as a mermaid to be able to play freely in Sabaody paradise? To know, the whole of the Fishmen Island, not just her one mermaid's dream is Sabaody's land amusement park. On this the Fishmen Island, murlocs and mermaids who want to play in Sabaody are caught and trafficked every year. What kind of thanks, aren't we partners? Kami. Luffy held the back of his head with his hands, with a nonchalant smile on his face. In his opinion, between partners, there is no need to say words of thanks. Whether they are on board or not, as long as there is friendship, they are partners. Just like the original Vivi. This is the friendship between pirates. Dear Luffy, you are so kind. Why? Kami couldn't help but hug Luffy directly. Straw Hat Boy, you are such a good person. Papagu was also moved beside him. Hey, Kami-chan, I can give you a hug too. Sanji wriggled wretchedly beside Luffy. Then Kami let go and Luffy gave Sanji 10 hugs with great grace. From a certain point of view, Kami is also a cute and funny mermaid girl with a carefree personality. Mermaid's hug, I'm going to die happily. Sanji folded his hands on his chest and lay straight on the ground. Like a dead man with all his wishes fulfilled and fulfilled. Clang. A gleaming knife fell directly from Zoro's hand, and the sharp tip of the knife directly plunged into Sanji's cheek with the force of the drop. Hey, green algae head, are you going to kill me? Aren't you going to die happily? I just help you by the way, don't be grateful to me. Being killed by a green algae-headed bastard like you, I'm not happy at all. Zoro and Sanji fought as usual. Miss Shaki, on the other hand, squinted and smiled at their daily fuss. These young people have also added a lot of vigor to her tavern these days, and Shaki still likes the feeling of this kind of admiring junior making a fuss in front of her. Oh, welcome back, Rayleigh. Shaki, who squinted and smiled, sensed something, raised his eyes and said. At this moment, he just pushed open the door of the bar and walked in. Hey, Luffy, it's time for you to set sail. Rayleigh looked at Luffy in the bar, exclaimed. The warship from the Marine side is coming from the headquarters, and Garp is leading the team. Grandpa is here. Luffy was a little surprised. Maybe to warn you, little monkey. Ms. Shaki smiled elegantly with a cigarette between her fingers. After all, you have stayed in Sabaody for too long, and you are too high profile. Every day you spend at Sabaody is a blow to the prestige of the nearby naval headquarters. But Marine doesn't want to start a war with you, little monkey, so I can only use this method to remind you that it's time to go. So that's what it means. Usopp reacted and said, that's why Luffy's grandfather, Mr. Garp, was sent here. Marine really knows how to calculate. After all, you are now the famous King's pirates. Even Marine doesn't want to start a war with you again. Shaki laughed and said, I heard that because of the previous summit war, Marine is currently very busy in the first half of the 4 Seas in the Grand Line. If you calculate the time, you should really go. Rayleigh smiled and said, compared to New World, the first half of Grand Line is a bit too boring, especially with your current strength. Is New World really that interesting? Luffy asked with a gleam in his eyes. What? Rayleigh said with a nostalgic smile. The world's worst and unpredictable weather, the most shocking and unimaginable spectacle, all kinds of strange races, coupled with non-stop sea battles, and a group of powerful enemies. When you really enter the New World, you will be able to experience the fun there, which is why the first half of the Grand Line is called the Paradise. Leaving the Paradise. You have stepped into the New World. Quote. Rayleigh's calm words, coupled with his vicissitudes of life, give people a passionate feeling in just a few words, as if there is an interesting adventure world full of strange Luli in front of him. Luffy's eyes glowed like stars, and Zoro's hand subconsciously pressed the handle of the famous knife at his waist, his face full of fighting excitement. I'm really looking forward to it. New World food and ingredients. Sanji gently inserted a cigarette into his mouth, lit it, and exhaled lightly. Chopper also had bright eyes. Only Nami and Usopp looked at Rayleigh with chattering teeth. The first half of the Grand Line is just a paradise. So how dangerous is the New World? Okay, everyone, ready to set sail. Luffy was originally sitting cross-legged on the bar, excited by Rayleigh's words, jumped off the bar, raised his hands and shouted loudly. This is the excited voice of Chopper and the others. No, the wailing of Nami and Usopp is hidden in it. Sabaody Archipelago, full of rivers. Between mangroves and mangroves is a well-developed waterway. Walk out of the bar, go down a little, on a hidden seaway, and saw the Sunny, which has been fully coated. Sunny looks much newer than ever. The surface is coated with a thick layer of soap bubble film, which exudes a charming light under the sun. After Luffy and the others stepped on it, the soap bubbles felt soft and bouncy, as if they were stepping on clouds. Luffy and Chopper immediately started playing. Fragrant. Although the river channels in Podine are well developed, the roots of the Alchiman mangrove are very developed on the seabed, so this is not a very good diving site. You have to sail out of the interior of Sabaody and reach the outside of the entire Sabaody before you can dive. Rayleigh reminded from the shore. Aren't you running, Rayleigh? Luffy asked, leaning over the railing of the Sunny. After the Summit War, Rayleigh lived so close to naval headquarters that he might be targeted too. Don't worry about me. After sending you off, I will go to the islands of Calm Belt to avoid the limelight. Don't worry, Haiju won't focus on me, an old man. On the child. Quote. Rayleigh smiled and waved his hands and said, on the contrary, you, Luffy, after entering the New World, you will become the center of the storm, so be prepared. Oh, goodbye then, Uncle Rayleigh, hee hee. Luffy gave Rayleigh a big wave and a big smile. Go and turn that world upside down, Luffy. Watching the Sunny going away, Rayleigh thought to himself. His eyes were a little misty, as if he had returned to that afternoon decades ago. He was lying on the stolen boat, and a boy wearing a straw hat boarded his boat and smiled at him. Come with me and turn the world upside down, Rayleigh. In this way, one of them became One Piece and the other Pluton. Want a glass of memory wine? Rayleigh. Shaki, who was standing not far behind, asked softly. That would be the best. Rayleigh took off his glasses, wiped them lightly, and said, when people get old, they can't help but recall things from their youth. If you don't want 810, go and give more. Shaki laughed. Then when she looked up, Rayleigh was gone. So cute, Rayleigh. Shaki was taken aback for a moment, then laughed. The sea outside Sabaody. Give it to me, Luffy. The bow is a big dog-headed warship sailing on the sea. Garp stood on the bow with his arms folded. The sea breeze rattled the cloak of justice behind him. What nonsense are you talking about, Grandpa? There is no such thing as a pirate who can be caught without a fight. Shouted Luffy, standing on the bow of the Sunny, laughing. The current Luffy is completely different from that of Water 7 at that time. In the 7 capitals of water, facing Garp's pursuit, Luffy was a little flustered. But now, the performance is much calmer. In terms of spirit, I have grown too much. I'm not your grandfather now, I'm Marine's Vice Admiral, Garp. Relationships are useless, Luffy. Garp laughed and disappeared from the bow in an instant. He stepped on the air and rushed towards the Sunny quickly. Just retire from the Marine honestly, to me. 117. Luffy smiled, and his whole body was instantly enveloped in white light. Boom. Luffy also stepped on the air, pulling a long strip of white steam through the air. Rubber rubber. Pistol. From far away, Luffy raised his arm high, and then turned into an afterimage, shoot out quickly. And Garp grinned, raised his fist the size of a sandbag, and greeted him head-on. Boom. Invisible Conqueror's winding collision, warping the sea below into a giant Uzumaki. Black lightning and distorted air waves spread in all directions. Between Garp's and Luffy's fists, there are white sonic boom clouds that radiate. It is conceivable that the terrifying destructive power produced by their collision. Boom. The black Haki streamer bursts. Luffy backed straight aboard the Sunny. And Garp landed firmly on the warship. Goodbye, Grandpa. Luffy laughed and waved, soap bubbles rose around the Sunny, and the whole ship dived directly under Garp's nose. You've grown, Luffy. Garp looked at the fist that had just collided with Luffy. Some at war, he couldn't get a shot at Luffy, but now this love test. He finally had a real understanding of Luffy's strength. You turned the water on again, Vice Admiral Garp. The adjutant wearing sunglasses beside him said with a speechless face. With Garp's strength, he retreated with one punch, just like seeing off Straw Hat Crew. Although they are definitely not opponents in a real fight, it is too unpleasant to spread the word like this. There is no water. Sakazuki has been defeated, what can I, an old man, do? Garp held his nostrils and said innocently. Kebi and Salumbo next to him looked familiar. They had seen Vice Admiral Garp's attitude too much. Chapter 77 Four Emperors. So what? Advertise here. However, Mr. Luffy's current strength is really strong, and he can actually receive Mr. Garp's attack head-on. Kobe stood beside Garp, with reverence in his eyes. He is Luffy's #1 little fanboy. Seeing how powerful Luffy is, I feel really happy for him. After all, that is the 5 emperors with a bounty of 5.1 billion now, even Sakazuki Admiral was defeated by him. Harumipo swallowed her saliva and said, as the son of Mocha the Axe, he is still ready to return to the Straw Hat Crew to challenge when he becomes stronger. But after the battle of the top was over, he had no such idea at all. From the moment Luffy waved his fist and punched Marineford into a hole with a diameter of hundreds of meters, he knew that it was the object he would never see his back for the rest of his life. If it's Kebi, it's still possible. Hill Maibo glanced at Kebi beside him. After training together for so long, he also knew one thing, Kebi's talent is more than his. Thinking so much, it's better to practice more now. When will you two little devils grow up? Just as Garp was holding his nostrils and preparing to go back to the cabin, his eyes suddenly froze. At the port of Sabaody, on the trunk of a huge Alchiman mangrove tree, a man with full head of silver hair and holding a silver jug is sitting. Kebi and Salumbo on the side followed Garp's gaze, and their expressions changed instantly. That is, Pluton Rayleigh. Kebi exclaimed, and instantly entered a state of alert. Why are you nervous? That guy won't take the initiative to attack us. Garp looked at Rayleigh in the distance and raised the flagon in his hand high, as a greeting, but curled his lips. Don't worry about him. Pack up your things, this time the task is completed. Tell the headquarters, Straw Hat Crew has escaped from Sabaody, return. Garp sniffed his nostrils. Then he turned around and was about to return to the cabin. Mr. Garp, don't you need to arrest Pluton Rayleigh? Salumpo asked suspiciously from the side. How to arrest? Garp looked at him helplessly. A retired old guy with no influence, trying to catch him will take time and effort, and there is no gain. Anyway, he is also a legendary pirate, so don't make it like catching a mouse. I think back then, he and Sengoku didn't join forces to capture the legendary pirate. One-on-one, the other party wants to run away, it is too simple. Deep sea. Aboard the Sunny. Because I have been here once the first time, so the second time is also familiar with the road. When the Sunny is in port on the Fishmen Island. At this time, there was already a group of people waiting here at the port, and when Luffy and the others appeared on the Sunny, they immediately went up to meet them. Is it Lord Luffy? The king invites you to the Dragon Palace for a banquet. A mermaid with blue hair came up to him holding a golden trident, and said respectfully. What is this? Luffy looked at the person in front of him, and asked Xiaobadao curiously. This is the eldest prince of the Dragon Palace Kingdom, Lord Shark Star. Xiaoba explained. Master Shaxing came to invite, it should be the king of the Dragon Palace Kingdom, His Majesty Neptune wants to discuss something with you. King. Chopper was a little surprised in the back. Don't worry, everyone, His Majesty Neptune is a very good person, and he has a very good relationship with Whitebeard. Xiaoba smiled and said. Hachi was once a member of the Sun Pirates, and it is not in the same system as Dragon Palace. The entire Dragon Palace Kingdom is divided into two major forces. One of them is the Dragon Palace Kingdom on the bright side, and the other is the Sun Pirates created by Brother Fisher Tiger, and some Murlocs from Murloc Street. It's just that starting from Big Brother Tiger, the relationship between them has been very good. Working together to maintain peace on the Fishmen Island. Is that Uncle Whitebeard? Luffy pressed his hat, flashing Whitebeard's grinning face. Since Xiaoba said so, let's go to the banquet. Luffy laughed. A friend of a partner is also a friend, Luffy has always been like this. The mighty welcoming team headed towards the Dragon Palace. Some pirates who were also in the port all showed surprised expressions. What kind of big man is that? As a pirate, he was invited by the people of Dragon Palace. A pirate asked. He remembered the last time he was treated like this was the Whitebeard pirates and the Red Hair pirates 2 or 3 days ago. Those two are both the Four Emperors group, a pirate group located at the top of the sea. Do not you know? A pirate next to him quickly explained. This is the Straw Hat Pirates, known as the King of Pirates, surpassing the Four Emperors pirates. The man in the straw hat is the captain, the Straw Hat Boy. In the battle on the top, he defeated Marine Admiral Akainu head-on, made a big fuss in naval headquarters, and saved Ace the Fire Fist. Stop talking about it, that's a big pirate with a bounty of 5.1 billion. A pirate broke out in a cold sweat, and hurriedly distanced himself from Hai, who was discussing beside him. This feeling is a bit disturbing, like a monkey surrounded by people. Zoro frowned and looked at the surrounding pirates. His keen 5 senses allow him to easily hear the discussions of the people around him. How should I put it? It's a little awkward. This feeling of being wary of them as big shots. Haha, isn't it great? Zoro, just ignore it. Luffy didn't care, and walked ahead with her head in her arms. By the way, Xiaoba, where's Jinbei? Luffy suddenly remembered and asked. Jinbei didn't leave with Ace and the others, but stayed on Sabaody for a day, and then hurried back to the Fishman Island. For this chivalrous Murloc boss, Luffy and his group still have a good impression of them. When they were looking for Whitebeard before, Jinbei stayed with them on a boat for about 2 days, and they had a good chat. Later in the Summit War, Jinbei also risked his life, wanting to guard by his side. Niu, I don't know, but Boss Jinbei seems to be quite busy these days. Xiaoba opened his mouth and said. He is not very clear. Since joining Arlong, he has lost contact with the Sun Pirates here. After Arlong was defeated, Hachi didn't want to continue to be a pirate, but changed his career to make takoyaki. Now he is no longer a pirate, but an ordinary takoyaki shop owner, and he doesn't know much about Jinbei's affairs. That's it. Luffy didn't speak anymore, but looked left and right at the scenery of the Fishman Island on both sides. Not long after, I broke away from the team with Chopper Usopp and went shopping for some snacks from the Fishman Island. Is this the Fishman Island? These bubble tools are similar to those of the Sabaody archipelago. Zoro held a wine bottle in his hand, looking at the surrounding scene of the Fishman Island with great interest. And Sanji on the side had already left the team, frantically striking up a conversation with the beautiful mermaid beauty on the street. This group of guys is too embarrassing. Nami sighed while clutching his forehead. But even though they were wandering around, fortunately, no one completely left the team very far. Led by Shark Star, Luffy and the others soon came to a luxurious building. What a nice view. Both Nami and Robin couldn't help but speak. Is this the Dragon King's palace? It's really luxurious. Zoro looked up at the Dragon King's palace in front of him, and frowned slightly. Amazing, this place. Luffy laughed loudly, with a look of amazement on his face. The Dragon Palace city in front of you is located at the top of the Fishman Island. This is the sunlight that is closest to the Sun Tree Eve, and it looks no different from the sunlight on the ground. Under the warm sunshine, the splendid buildings of Dragon Palace City were revealed. The whole body is made of large corals, shells, and some other building materials. It really looks like a super large, exquisite handicraft. Brother Luffy. Walking into Dragon Palace City, a chubby figure shouted loudly from afar. Jinbei. Luffy greeted with a smile. Let's go, the banquet prepared by His Majesty Neptune is about to begin. Jinbei brought Luffy into the interior of Dragon Palace. Neptune sat high on the throne, and asked Luffy to sit beside him. It's a dedicated seat for big names who are equal to Neptune, like Whitebeard, Redhead, and Luogia. It's just that Luffy smiled and waved his hand to refuse. That seat is too high, I'd better stay here. It's very similar to your style, brother Luffy. Jinbei smiled from the side. The banquet started, and the Fishman Island still had plenty of supplies. All kinds of meat, fine wine, and beautiful mermaids. Let Luffy them have fun. After drinking and eating, Neptune also walked in front of Luffy and the others. Straw Hat, I want to beg for your help. Neptune spoke in a low voice. My Lord Father, His Majesty. The faces of Sha Xing and other ministers in Dragon Palace City changed, and they wanted to stop it. After all, as a king, Neptune asked like a straw hat boy, which was a bit embarrassing. But Neptune just waved his hand to stop them. Why are you so serious? Luffy clasped his hands on the back of his head, grinned and said with a big smile. Uncle Mermaid, you are friends with Uncle Whitebeard, and you are also friends with Jinbei, so you must be our friend. If you need help, just ask. Neptune looked at Luffy with a big smile in front of him, and was taken aback. He could sense Luffy's sincerity. You really are different, Straw Hat Boy. Neptune saw many big pirates and big men passing by on the Fishman Island. But Luffy is different from everyone else, different from Whitebeard's bold and domineering, red-haired Shanks free and easy Haki. The Straw Hat Boy in front of him showed a kind of sincerity and purity like a child. Such a person always makes people feel good in just a few words. Then I won't go around in circles. Neptune said. I want to use your flag to protect the Fishman Island. Neptune lowered his face, and his deep and earnest words echoed in Dragon Palace City. Shark Star tightly squeezed the golden trident in his hand, and turned his face away with unwillingness, while the other ministers of the Dragon Palace also showed ugly expressions. They weren't targeting Luffy. Instead, I feel that it is a bit ugly that my country has to rely on the protection of others. However, it had to be like this, just like the Whitebeard pirates left their flag here. Here, the shelter of the Fishmen Island is average. The Fishmen Island is the only way for pirates to go to the New World. The impact they have to face is really too big. The atmosphere fell silent for an instant. Neptune lowered his head slightly, and Jinbei looked at Luffy with a serious face. Zoro and Sanji behind them, aware of this tense atmosphere, also looked at their own captain, waiting for him to make a decision. Luffy rubbed his chin, tilted his head with a dignified face, as if he was thinking about this question seriously. Then his head tilted a little bit, and the range became bigger and bigger, and the confusion on his face became more and more. When his head was about to tilt to the bottom, he asked with some doubts. Borrowing the flag, what does it mean to protect the country? Boom. A group of people fell directly to the ground. You bastard, I don't know that you have pretended to think for so long. Nami punched Luffy on the head. Jinbei stood up and explained to Luffy with a speechless face. The so-called use of the flag is to plant your pirate flag on this island, the most conspicuous place, which means to tell all the pirates who arrive on this island that this Murloc Island is the territory of your Straw Hat Pirates. Quote. If someone messes around on this island, it's an enemy of the Straw Hat Pirates. This is what it means to borrow the flag to protect the island. Because New World values territory very much, the four emperors compete for territory in New World, and every territory that belongs to them will plant their flag. So it is, so it is. Luffy nodded repeatedly. See that flag? Jinbei pointed to the huge and conspicuous pirate flag above the Fishmen Island. A cross skull, plus a conspicuous beard like a crescent moon. That's Uncle Whitebeard's pirate flag. Luffy is no stranger to this symbol, having spent so long on the Moby Dick after all. That's right, the one who sheltered us on the Fishmen Island in the era of great pirates was Dad. It's just that there's already four emperors Whitebeard's pirate flag, so why ask for Luffy? Sanji asked with some doubts. Even with the overwhelming coverage of the newspapers, they are far from Whitebeard in terms of fame. The name of Whitebeard has been handed down from the time of Luogia to the present. You also know that my wife passed away. Jinbei said in a low voice. Paper cannot contain fire. One day after Dad passed away, the news spread among the New World's underground forces that Kaido had already started attacking Dad's territory, and Ace and the others were resisting. As for the Fishmen Island, it's actually quite far away from Dad's territory. It's just that in the past, well, Zhao had Dad's name, and no one dared to mess around. After Dad's death, this place was also targeted. Up. Who makes you feel so tricky, Jinbei? Zoro asked. He is aware of Jinbei's strength, although not as good as them. But a strong presence. Four emperors bigmom. Jinbei clenched his fists tightly. If it's another little pirate, he naturally doesn't care, but he is Shichibukai. Except for the four emperors, his strength is already at the mainstream level among the pirates. However, the opponent is the four emperors who have the same status as Dad. None of the four emperors' pirates can compete with them. As for the reason why Bigmom is eyeing the Fishmen Island, it is also very simple, it is because of the snacks made by Dragon Palace Kingdom. Four emperors. Nami's face was serious. Four emperors are pirates standing at the top of the sea. Come on so soon. Interesting. Zoro smiled, his eyes full of fighting spirit. I know this kind of request is a bit rude, sorry, I was abrupt. Neptune whispered. Choosing to shelter them, the Straw Hat Pirates will be facing a four emperors pirates head-on. This is no joke, and there is indeed no friendship at all between him and the Straw Hat Boy, not with the original Whitebeard. What are you talking about? Uncle Mermaid. Luffy looked at Neptune in front of him with some doubts, and said, aren't you a friend of Uncle Whitebeard? Besides, this is Jinbei's hometown. Of course we will help you. Adi. Quote. Besides, you also treated us to such a big meal. You, Straw Hat Boy, do you know what it means to protect the Fishmen Island? Neptune said in a daze, that means you are going to be an enemy of four emperors bigmom. So, Luffy tilted his head suspiciously. That's the four emperors. Neptune felt a little tired. I know, but so what? Luffy pressed the straw hat and said with a smile. We came to New World, what we are looking for is the four emperors chapter 78 Amazing Beauty, Mermaid Princess. Advertise here. Luffy's calm voice made Neptune slightly startled. From this carefree, scheming young man, he felt a kind of conceit and haki that was not inferior to Whitebeard, the red-haired one. The domineering aura possessed by the Emperor of the Sea is stronger than that of the King of the Murloc Kingdom. It's just Whitebeard and Redhead, that can be seen at a glance. And the haki of the Straw Hat Boy, which can only be shown occasionally, is hidden under his carefree character. This does not mean how deep the castle of the Straw Hat Boy in front of him is. It's that he doesn't have the consciousness of being in a high position at all. From the bottom of his heart, he treats people equally. It is this kind of disposition that perhaps makes so many people who have met him and been with him for a period of time praise him so much. In this chaotic sea, there are really too few such people. You will always be a friend of our Dragon Palace Kingdom, Straw Hat Boy. Neptune looked at Luffy, who was smaller than him, and said solemnly. Of course. Luffy gave a big grin. You can stay in the Fishman Island as long as you want, Straw Hat Boy, including Dragon Palace City, you can go wherever you want. Neptune laughed. The Fishman Island has a long history, I hope you can have fun here. Thank you, Uncle Mermaid, you are also a good person. Luffy's knowledgeable color can perceive Neptune's closeness. From his point of view, Neptune is an uncle who is a little strange, but he is very nice and has an interesting banquet with them. Speaking up, Luffy felt that the kings he had seen were all good. King Cobra in Alabasta, and the Mermaid King in front of him, are all good-natured uncles. I don't know how Vivi is doing now. Luffy's thinking is a little divergent. Wait until after traveling around the world for a week, then go to her. Jinbei, won't you come with us? Nami asked. No, I'll forget it, I still have some things to deal with, next time, ha ha ha. Jinbei laughed heartily and refused. Sanji and Robin glanced at him, slightly puzzled in their eyes. They always feel that after coming to the Fishman Island, Jinbei seems to be deliberately alienating them. But they didn't feel Jinbei's malice, so they didn't think much about it. Luffy stretched out his arms, and directly pulled a huge coral in the distance, and the whole person flew out in an instant, and disappeared immediately with a hearty laugh. That bastard, always. Sanji covered his head and said with some headaches. 383 The captain, without paying attention, disappeared from people's eyes. Don't worry, if you want to find Luffy, with our manpower, you will find it soon, and you can rest assured to play in the Fishman Island. There are still many well-known attractions, such as the Mermaid Bar, and the Murloc Bay. Mermaid Bay. Sanji stroked his chin, thinking calmly. In his mind, a sunny beach instantly appeared, and a group of beautiful mermaid girls with shell corsets on their upper body were waving towards him. Before he knew it, his breathing became heavy and his expression became wretched. I'm going to Mermaid Bay. Sanji's voice can almost run through the entire Dragon Palace. I knew it. Nami sighed resentfully, and then said to Robin beside him, let's go to Mermaid Shopping Street to buy some clothes, Robin. Okay. Robin smiled softly, after everyone in the Straw Hat Pirates left in a fuss. Neptune watched the back of them leaving, and glanced slightly at Jinbei beside him from the corner of his eye. Hey, Jinbei, do you stop thinking about it? Joining the Straw Hats, unlike Fire Fist Ace, I think the Straw Hat Luffy has more potential to be a king, and he is more likely to change the world. Neptune said in a low voice. He has been the king of the Murloc Kingdom for so many years. Under the special environment of the Fishman Island, I have seen too many outstanding people, including Whitebeard, Luogia, and Red Hair who are at the apex of the era. His long and rich experience made his eyes very vicious. He was able to see something different from that carefree, scheming boy in the straw hat. Coupled with that monster-level strength, he might really change the world. Haven't you been waiting for such a person? Brother Luffy, he really has something more than Brother Ace. After staying with those noisy guys for a long time, even the old man can't help but want to join. However, I am not alone. Behind me, there are still the Sun Pirates. Brother Tiger entrusted the Sun Pirates to me. I must take them to continue walking. Jinbei said with a firm gaze. This is what he implemented, the way of chivalry. I think you should think carefully, Jinbei, whether it's for your ideals or to carry out Tiger's will. Neptune said with a serious expression. With the strength of you and the Sun Pirates alone, it will never be possible to carry out Tiger's will. A man like Luffy has tolerance and equality in his eyes. By his side, maybe you can better carry out your will. You've already missed Whitebeard, and I don't want you to regret missing Straw Hat. Anyway, you're not Shichibukai now. Neptune reminded. He knows what Jinbei has done for the Fishman Island, and he also knows Jinbei's chivalry and what he is carrying, the man-fisher tiger, the great and heavy will. But obviously, relying on his strength alone, it is impossible to carry out Tiger's will in this sea of the jungle. The former Whitebeard was a good candidate, but at that time, Jinbei, due to Shichibukai's standpoint, could not join the Whitebeard pirates in order to avoid the Murloc Kingdom and the world government. And now, the Straw Hat Pirates is a better choice. But many years of heavy burdens made this man feel confused when faced with the choice. Jinbei fell silent. He really likes the Straw Hat Pirates. Although only a few days to get along. But their detached, sincere and equal attitude of getting along with each other. During the Summit War, the Straw Hat Boy fought desperately to save the Big Brother. Members of the Straw Hat Pirates, following the captain, have the determination and courage to face the strongest forces in the world. It made Jinbei fall in love with this young pirate group deeply. But, as Neptune said, what he was carrying made him subconsciously escape. Neptune looked at the silent Jinbei, sighed, and then hit Jinbei hard on the back. Don't take yourself too seriously, Jinbei. Whether it's the Fishman Island or the Sun Pirates, you've never been the only one who carries them. Don't be too conceited. After speaking, Neptune walked away directly. Jinbei stayed where he was, with a pained expression on his face. A sudden slap was sent over. With such a huge body and strength, he was almost spit out by the slap. It's so big, this Dragon Palace City. Luffy wandered the corridors. The big Dragon Palace City, after a few turns, made him completely lost. Climb to the high place and have a look. Rubber, hook lock. Luffy stretched out one hand and grabbed a huge coral directly. Then he pressed the hat with one hand, and with the retraction of his arm, he quickly flew to the top of the coral. Ah, I found it, haha. Luffy looked at a conspicuous building in the distance, and said with a smile. It was a tall tower-like building, very conspicuous. It wasn't until Luffy got really close that he realized that the entire tower-like building was made of extremely hard materials. And there are long chains hanging on the huge door, which looks like a prison. Could it be the wrong way? But there is a smell of food inside. Could it be the food storage room of the Dragon Palace Kingdom? Luffy's eyes lit up. The food in Dragon Palace City was so delicious that he couldn't help but have some aftertaste. Uncle Mermaid can go anywhere, so that means, this place can also be used. Luffy laughed. Pressing the palm of the wrist on the thick iron chain, armament Haki twisted, and with a slight twist, the heavy iron chain broke completely. Anyone there? Luffy pushed open the huge door and headed inside. This giant tower is very strange, there is no window at all, it is daytime, but the inside of the tower is very dark. And the ground is full of water, the sea water has not reached the ankle. Fortunately, it's not very deep, otherwise, it would be a bit bad for Luffy. There are two people, why are you silent? CGBA. Luffy asked with some doubts. In the perception of color. There are two emotions of fear. Could it be a prisoner? But it doesn't feel like it. Luffy walked in the direction of the perceived emotion. After walking a few steps, he bumped into a huge and soft place. Full of elasticity, like a soft cushion, it bounced his whole body out. What's this? A trampoline. In the dense darkness, although he couldn't see things, he could feel the softness of that large area. Soft and fun. Luffy pressed his hand into the darkness in front of him. It was softer than the soap bubbles on Sabaody's ground, and, with temperature and aroma, it gave people a comfortable feeling. Very interesting. Luffy simply jumped on it. The whole person was like falling on a trampoline, being bounced so that the whole person flew up. Then fell down and bumped a few times before maintaining the balance of the body. But even if you lie on it, you can feel the amazing softness. It was like lying on cotton candy, making Luffy so comfortable that he wanted to fall asleep directly. Are all the beds in Dragon Palace so comfortable? You must buy one and take it home. Luffy clasped his hands on the back of his head and thought as he rested his head comfortably. However, just when he was about to fall asleep comfortably, the whole bed suddenly started to rise up, and then trembled violently. What's wrong? Is there an earthquake? Luffy looked surprised. And at this moment, he can perceive the two emotions in this room sensed in the color of knowledge, and his fear has reached the extreme. The next moment, Luffy was completely bounced off. The dazzling light suddenly appeared in the darkness, and Luffy couldn't help but close his eyes. Only a terrified voice sounded. Megalo. A huge figure rushed out of the light and bit Luffy forcefully. Clang. It sounded like the clanging of metal and iron. Luffy just raised his arm casually, covered by armament Haki, easily blocked the attack. Luffy's eyes snap open, Conqueror's Haki spreads. A huge, fat shark in front of him immediately made a frightened expression like a human being, then quickly let go, and swam behind another huge figure. So big. Luffy's eyes adjusted to the sudden bright light and looked straight ahead. What I saw was a huge mermaid, and the shark behind her. The shark was alright, but it was the first time Luffy had seen such a big mermaid. Long pink hair, golden hair accessories, shell-shaped earrings, huge water blue eyes, plump bust, and the lower body, pink fishtail. An astonishing beauty that is beautiful enough to make Sanji faint with happiness. There is also that lovely and pitiful temperament. At this moment, those big blue eyes were filled with tears. Biting his lip, he looked at Luffy aggrievedly, ready to cry anytime. Luffy was about to ask something when suddenly a red light flashed in his eyes. He disappeared in place in an instant. Next moment. A huge axe flew in from the open gate, as if locked on the target, and slashed towards Shirahoshi. Clang. The figure of Luffy appeared in front of Shirahoshi. With his right hand clenched into a fist, armament Haki was entwined, and with a light wave, the huge axe flew out instantly and hit the ground. What is this? Luffy looked at the huge axe in front of him with some doubts. Within the scope of his knowledge color perception, he didn't feel hostility at all, but the axe did indeed fly over, and the axe still had a lot of power. Seeing Luffy flying the giant axe in front of him, Shirahoshi's mouth widened and he wanted to shout for help, also stopped. After a while, Luffy is at a huge dining table, eating. Next to him, Shirahoshi propped his hands on the table, watching Luffy eat with a smile of interest. Her full bust seemed to be placed on a table. Deep white, facing Luffy's face. You mean your Uncle Mermaid's daughter? Your name is Shirahoshi, right? Your body is indeed the same size as that uncle, but you are too timid, so I will call you a coward. It turns out that Lord Luffy is a guest of Lord Father. No wonder he came here. I thought he was a bad person. He almost lost Luffy. Shirahoshi's voice is as soft as her appearance, with a dreamy beauty. By the way, is Lord Luffy a pirate? Come to the Fish-Man Island from far away. Master Luffy has seen many scenes outside, the sun outside the sea, flowers, is there anyone else who is the same as the Fish-Man Island? If you want to know, why don't you go out and see? Luffy didn't show any impatience, and asked while eating food. Because if I go out, I will die. Shirahoshi looked at the gate of the hard-shell tower with awe and longing. Huge teardrops dripped from her eyes, and her downward curving eyebrows added to her sense of melancholy and a pitiful demeanor. Wow wow. Shirahoshi put his hands at the corners of his eyes, wiped his tears like a child, and said, I've been living here since 10 years ago, and haven't been out. I can't even attend the funeral of my mother. Luffy's eating movements slowed down. Huge teardrops hit the table and splashed onto the food in his hand, which he bit down. It's so bitter. Luffy stuck out his tongue in disgust. But what is more bitter is the emotion that comes from seeing and hearing, which is the great sadness in the heart of the girl in front of her. Okay, don't cry, coward. Luffy swallowed some bitter food in 2 or 3 gulps, and said loudly. Lord Luffy. Shirahoshi looked at Luffy with misty teary eyes. Since you want to know the things outside so much, then I will take you out to have a look. After all, other people's descriptions are never as good as what you see with your own eyes. Luffy looked at Shirahoshi and said with a big smile. But, Shirahoshi was still a little hesitant and afraid. Nothing but, don't worry, I'm very strong, I will protect you, and if there are any strange attacks that come flying, I will destroy them all. Luffy stretched his hands quickly, and pulled directly on the shell corset on Shirahoshi's chest. He flew up, found a comfortable place to sit down, and laughed. Set off.